Hello, welcome to the stream. Today we are going to be reading The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent. It was a book released originally in 2000 as the first quarter, and then slightly updated for a wider release in 2001 as The Ultimate History of Video Games, From Pong to Pokemon and Beyond, the story behind the craze that touched our lives and changed the world. In just a couple of days here, Stephen Kent is going to be putting out a Volume 2 of this. I don't know what the subtitle is, but The Ultimate History of Video Games Volume 2. So we're going to look back at this work that has been a very defining video game history book for an extremely long time. Any of the big stories that you know from video game history, they are pretty much all codified here in Stephen Kent's book. Even the ones that are totally and utterly not true. Because, like many of the people who have gone on since then, Stephen Kent has a proclivity of believing that what he captured in his interviews was the truth. Though he did reference other sources on a lot of these things, there was a lot of bias towards the uncritical view of interview sources that he personally conducted, among other things. I mean, there's just so many problems with it. I think we should just get right into it. So we're going to start off with the the preview acknowledgments, the praise, as he likes to say. This book is extraordinary, with enough quotes, anecdotes, and detail that it reads more like a fast-moving novel than a literary tome. Peter Moore, CEO of Sega. Now, that is partially true. I wouldn't say it really reads like a novel, but the quotes definitely give it a breezy feel. The reason people like this book is because it's very easy to approach. It gives you enough necessary background information. It doesn't dwell too much on the greater societal effects of things. But it is just a sort of, you're in your seat and you're ready to experience it. It's not going to try and overload you with all the possible little bits that can go into a wider cultural history of something. In the game industry, like in movies, an incredible amount happens behind the scenes. This book tells it all. Mark Cherney, co-creator of Marble Madness and co-creator of Crash Bandicoot. That is a very far stretch to call him a co-creator of Crash Bandicoot. He was not really responsible for anything to do with the game. He was just kind of the producer. So I'm going to put that as the first error on this list. As you see here, I have a very specific error list because this is going to become a giant thing by the end of this. It is already on page 1, getting its first error. Mark Cherney, not the co-creator. I never said I was a good typist, by the way. Oh, yeah, that thing. Of Crash Bandicoot. I did have a teacher who worked on Crash Bandicoot, Bill Gashwan. He was doing technical support from the Sony side because he was actually one of the hardware engineers on the original PlayStation. But he really knew the Naughty Dog guys pretty well, and he really thinks what they did was really remarkable. He also has some stories about stuff like Blasto on the PSX. Definitely need to interview him sometime. From the advent of coin-op video games through its transition to the consumer video games industry, The Ultimate History of Video Games tells it as it is, an enjoyably informative bird's-eye view of this entertainment medium. Joel Hochberg, president of Rare Inc. I don't think he's the president of Rare. He was president of Coinit, which was Rare's kind of distribution operation selling facility. It's really confusing. It doesn't make any sense. But Joel Hochberg, this is definitely one of those kind of very PR things. I'm not sure how much he truly read through the book, but that's another matter for another time. The Ultimate History of Video Games is the definitive history of computer and video games. Stephen Kent takes readers from the arcade to the boardroom and introduces them to the men and women who have transformed gaming from a garage hobby into the current multi-billion-dollar industry of technology entertainment for the new millennium. Arthur Pober, president of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. Again, a very PR kind of response there. Yeah, there's... It is not definitive, I can tell you that much. I mean, it's... Like, especially computer and video games, he barely touches on computer stuff. He touches on it with, like, Space War and Doom, and that's all that matters. And there's, like, little mentions of, like, Sierra and Broderbund in between, but he really doesn't care about computer games at all. And after the crash, he barely cares about arcade games, except, like, when Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 become a thing. So, it's really... This is not the tell-all story. This is just... a slice of it, mostly focused on the console industry, Atari, Nintendo, Sega, Sony. That's what this book is about. A great history of the video game industry. Steve Kent reports the inside story. Howard Lincoln, former chairman of Nintendo of America, CEO of the Seattle Mariners. I actually didn't know he had gotten out of chairman by the time that this book was printed out, but... seems that was the case. Yeah, that was short and simple. A must-read for newcomers and veterans alike. Michael Katz, former president of Sega, Atari, and Epix. He was never a president at Atari, so actually I'm going to put that as another error. I think he was the vice president of marketing or some such. Certainly was not the president, because that was a Trammell role. Gotta keep it in the family, you know? Stephen Kent's passion for the video game industry illuminates every page. Despite all my video game industry contacts over the years, I learned something new in every chapter. Richard Doherty, director of Envisioneering Group. That name sounds familiar. I really don't know who this person is. I'm sure that he's got plenty of context, but context don't get you the story. You gotta read about it. Nobody's gonna be able to dish out the whole thing for you. So, apart from the fact that Stephen Kent is one of the big authorities on this thing we call the video game, he can also make history fun. Eddie Adlam, publisher of Replay magazine. So first person that I've interviewed out of this set. Yeah, you know, Eddie's very enthusiastic about the history side, so I'm glad that he agreed to be in this book. He was interviewed for a couple of other books too, but yeah, this is it's fun. I'm not going to say that his telling is not fun, but there is quite a lot to be desired in terms of how much it tells, and especially for Eddie, I'd assume he would be a little bit miffed about how short-shrifted the arcade gets. But at least his story gets to be told, so. I certainly wasn't prepared for the engrossing, almost novel-like work that I discovered when I read The Ultimate History of Video Games. It was quite a pleasant surprise. GameSpy. GameSpy. That's one of those... They seem to really like the history angle back in the day, and so you have to go into the Wayback Machine and get a lot of their articles, because they did do a couple interesting dives on things, but... Yeah, I'm not... It's not like a novel. It really jumps around too many characters to be called a novel. Can't even call it a George R.R. Martin kind of novel. The book reads like a text version of one of those mammoth Ken Burns documentaries without all the weird and pretentious poetry. The book leaves very few historical stones unturned. Happy Puppy. I don't know what Happy Puppy is. I've never heard of Happy Puppy before. I am definitely, you know, there's a reason that poetry is in the Ken Burns documentary, because it's the words of people at the time and trying to reflect how they saw things. Anyways, I'm not here to try and defend Ken Burns, one of the most successful filmmakers of all time. I love his stuff, but we'll just leave it at that. Highly recommended for any coin-op hobbyist library. Tim Ferranti, Game Room magazine. Game Room was a specialized, you know, coin-op focused retro kind of magazine. It also covered kind of current stuff too, but it was more for collectors, pinball machines and electromechanical games and stuff. They had a couple interesting historical articles. It was mainly just kind of priceless, and here's the collectors who have all this stuff. So, but, I'm not sure why they're so enthused about it. You'd be hard-pressed to find a better book about the history of video games. In fact, you can't. It really is an engaging read, and you'll find yourself rereading sections for years to come. Now, I will say that at the time, in terms of you want a comprehensive, in as much as it is comprehensive, a wide-spanning look at video games and just a broad idea of the industry and an introduction to the legends and, the main games that most people are going to be talking about. Ultimate History of Video Games is that. I'm just not really sure about the better... Yeah, there's definitely better books that were already printed by this time. Kent is not a pioneer. He just happened to have some interesting contacts, and he put things kind of together in an interesting way. Steve Kent has created a more compelling version of gaming history, one that relies heavily on anecdotes from the heavyweights of the gaming industry. You see, that's kind of a review quote I can get behind, because it's built on anecdotes. It's really not built on looking at other sources, even though it does copy a lot of the narrative from sources like Zap, The Rise and Fall of Atari, and Game Over, the one about Nintendo. He definitely read these books, but I don't think he really absorbed them. A thing of precious value, Kent's supremely exhaustive research ensures that nuggets of insight into what went on behind the scenes leap from nearly every page. Read this book now or forever. Be an unenlightened gamehead. Gamehead. Yes. One of the many ways that they didn't want to say gamer because they thought it was like publication exclusive or something. I think you could go without this and still be pretty enlightened, though in part some of that is that they took information from other sources took information from this book and used it to build their own narratives. There are good nuggets in here, like especially the stuff he does with Sega. Console Wars would not exist without this book, 100%. But there's just a lot of missing of the mark. There have been a lot of books written about the video game business. None of them seem to get it. When people ask me about the video game business, I tell them to read The Ultimate History of Video Games. Ed Rutberg, creator of Battlezone. Ah, Ed. He's on Twitter, by the way. You can search at Gonzo Ed. He answered a couple Battlezone questions that I had, but I don't, it talks more about the background factors of certain things, but I'm not sure it really does get it. That's the real concern I have with that. A fantastic account of the history of video games reads like a novel. Lenny Herman, author of Phoenix, The Fall and Rise of Video Games. I thought it was Rise and Fall. Maybe I'm just getting too confused here. Yes, Leonard Herman, he who likes to position himself as the founder of video game history. I think he needs to lay off that a little bit, because I'm not sure what that's even supposed to mean, when you're like making it very specific, when you don't count this and this and this. Leonard's a nice guy. I'm not sure he's really the game scholar that he presumes he is. Good thing that nobody's going to view this video, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble for all the things I say about people. Incredible insight into the creation of some of the biggest video games. Having been in this business for 14 years, I was amazed by the amount of information and only wish the book could have been longer. Ed Boon, creator of Mortal Kombat. I'm not sure it would have benefited from being longer. It just needed more depth. That's all it needed. We'll get into this as we get into the book proper. We're still not out of the acknowledgements. I found this book fascinating to read. Besides reliving the stories about the people and the games, it goes into the inside stories and politics of the video game industry. Ed Logg, creator of Asteroid Centipede and Gauntlet. The contentious is creator of Centipede. Earlier they were like co-creator of Crash Bandicoot. Now they're saying that Ed Logg is the sole creator of all these things. Just for that, I'm gonna, since he specified it, I feel like that is a proper correction that we need to put in here. Okay, let's keep going. A nostalgic sweeping trip down memory brick road. Ugh. The ultimate history of video games is great for the people who want to learn more about the early days of video games. Tendo Box, which I assume is some Nintendo fan website that I've never heard of. Alright, that's the end of the acknowledgements. So here we are into the Three Rivers Press ebook edition of Stephen L. Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games. To Professor Alf Pratt, that rare individual who understands the responsibilities of journalism and teaching. Very nice. You know, I'm not here to cast any shade on Kent as a person, just whether or not he is the right person to be telling the story of the entire history of video games. So we have 30 general chapters. It goes from the basically Space Wars, kind of where he draws the line. I think the Higginbotham Tennis for Two is in there too, and then it ends right at like PS2, like just launched when he put out this edition of the 2001 version. So that's where we're going to, and then we'll check out the source notes too. Again, we're not going to do this all in one go because it is a very long book, but I'm definitely going to go for a couple hours and hopefully get somewhere nice with this. And if people join me, they can come and do funny voices. That'll be fun. Forward. When Stephen Kent asked me to write a forward to this book... Oh yeah, the forward to this book is Peter Molyneux, which is a very interesting choice. You know, at the time, he really wasn't known for much. Like, Populous was big in Britain, and especially Japan, too. Like, and Dungeon Keeper had come out, but he wasn't known as this guy who goes up on stage and gives these flowery presentations about the potential of video games and stuff, so I guess in that way it was a prescient choice. Alright, when Stephen Kent asked me to write the foreword to this book, I was deeply honored and rather pleased. I then started to wonder what I would write. These feelings made me realize what is so useful about this book is that it chronicles the beginnings of a new entertainment medium. Yeah, already I'm kind of lost on his point here. Our industry's greatest problem has been one of identity. Where culturally do video games fit in? They don't fit into films, they don't fit into books, they don't fit into any existing pigeonhole. I mean, yeah, they're games. There are other games that exist. I know that might be hard to comprehend for some people who video games are kind of their heart and soul. But yeah, there are other things do exist. 12 years ago, when I produced my first game, my greatest challenge was to try to get someone interested in it. After talking with Stephen, I believe he has found a similar problem with placing this book. Thankfully, he persevered, as I did. Yes, the monumental struggle of... Oh, there we go! It's Mr. Dale! Hello, how are you doing?
This is beyond my wildest dreams. You're
yes, you
reading the book to yourself. Tell me this is being recorded.
Yes, it is being recorded. I'm not just going completely out into the ether.
I'm here for the intervention.
So this is Mr. Quarter Past has joined the stream for us. There is one viewer. I don't know if that's you, but...
Oh, okay.
So there is somebody watching.
Oh, so we're simultaneously on Twitch then.
Yes.
Copy that. It is not me.
Yeah. I probably should stream my screen here. Just to give... Alright. Let's see. Let's... Technical... Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, screens. Screen 2. Alright.
Well, I'll interject now to say that I simply dropped by to catch the intro and won't be back for several... You'll be on chapter 4 by the time that I return with
Well, thank you very much for dropping in, Mr. Dale.
I'm going to hang out. Please, carry on. Just
hello. Elsie and Dempsey.
I'm trying to figure out what I just walked into.
Well, this is a stream, a book reading of The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen Kent. I'm just getting through with the preface before we get into the book proper.
Yeah, but you've already had 3 hours.
I mean, do you consider my voice dramatic, Densey? In a world.
You could really,
But it is a straight read-through. All the lines of text shall be read.
all the lines of text.
Yes.
And hello, Dancy.
Ah, merci.
Yeah, so... Yeah, just in time for a book reading. I'm writing a script myself, so
Beautiful.
that's perfect.
So you'll have to listen to my dulcet tones as you drift into your work.
You're doing a live error list.
Yep, this is on the Twitch.
Yeah, like, oh, we're actually on Twitch. Oh,
Yep.
I should behave myself then. Maybe you can give me a link to a Twitch so I can host it?
Yeah, it's in the live stream channel.
Oh, there it is.
And I'm recording it at the same time. I'm going to put up an unlisted video in case anybody wants to...
No,
You shouldn't say bad words.
that's a bit much for me, sorry.
Well, I've taken over this channel, so this is how it's going to be. So Densey, it's Peter Molyneux, your favorite designer. So do you want to take up the last paragraph here?
Oh, sure.
All right.
Let me
Densey is a huge
however,
Peter
right?
Molyneux fan.
Fan is in quotes.
Yes.
Okay. However, now that we have this book, at last, we have a faithful record of the cultural history of what I am sure will one day be one of the most important entertainment mediums in the world.
Ooh.
It is shocking to me to open the first page and read through the first chapter and look back through the years of my life. Each chapter unveils a new episode in the history of computer games that coincides with my own history.
It's like is he reading a biography of himself instead of this book?
I think so.
Because I'm not sure he's really in this book.
What this highlights for me is that young people today think of computer games as a natural pastime, which was not always the case. They can't imagine a world without computer games. And what Stephen's book does, and it's the first to do this, is set out the history of computer games that is both compelling and compulsive. I endorse and encourage you to read this excellent book.
Wait, what does that mean? Is both compelling and compulsive? How can the history be compulsive?
It's Peter Molyneux, man. You gotta.
Yeah, he was an interesting choice. You know, in 2001, he was not known as the guy who like goes up on stage and gives like these flowery presentations of stuff. So it was fairly interesting to get him to be the opener for the book. But like, oh man,
He too has one of those Walter Day medals.
Oh really?
I'm pretty sure. I'm quite certain as I scrolled down that monstrosity yesterday.
I mean that would make sense.
Yes, he's in the club.
Wow. Well, Ethan, where are you getting your medal?
When I sell my soul, because that's the only way you get it. You get one.
Sell yours.
I did walk by Walter Day, so.
So you already have one.
Yeah, I've been graced with his
patent
presence.
referee shirt?
Yeah, he does all the time. Like it's not.
Yeah, I would imagine.
He literally just walks around with it, and people think that he's cool somehow.
If we take away his branding, what's left?
A bushy beard.
Beard.
All right, so now we're on to the acknowledgements.
Wow.
Oh.
We're getting into the deep stuff here.
Indeed. In 1972, my physical education teacher took the class to a bowling alley in Calihi. I don't know, if Alex was here, he would tell me. Hello, it is Mr. Carl of the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine has joined us.
Oh,
Howdy.
hey, buddy.
I don't know, have you ever lived in Hawaii, Carl? Like Alex? Because then you could tell me how to pronounce this island here.
I think it's Kalihi.
Kalihi. Why does the Canadian know? Why?
Hi, everybody.
Carl.
There we
Carl.
go. Yay. Hi. No, I've never lived in Hawaii, so I
Okay.
couldn't tell you.
So we're doing a read-through of the ultimate history of video games. where I'm doing the read through, and then pulling people in to
Just do a section, so.
yeah, just a couple of them. So if you know, however long you're sticking around, I'll get you to participate. This is a class participation exercise,
Oh.
and it's live on Twitch.
I will see what I
The
can
one
do.
guy who was riding on our coattails too and doing that.
Okay.
We always have one in the project.
So in 1972, my physical education teacher took the class to a bowling alley in Kalihi on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. See, I can get that one.
You know what?
I've heard that enough. Because there's only like 5 islands on Hawaii, so you just need to memorize the
you know what it is?
pronunciation.
I'm from the 80s and I saw like all of Magnum PI. That's probably what it is.
Okay, now it makes sense. As we walked past the familiar line of electromechanical games, Night Bomber was my favorite at the time, I noticed a game that seemed to be running on a television set, or possibly a computer. My teacher sent the other kids off to bowl while he and I dropped a quarter into the machine and batted a square ball back and forth with rectangular paddles. Obviously, the game was Pong. You know, I feel like I need to put an error in here, just because I'm highly doubtful that a Pong machine got to Hawaii in 1972. But I'm gonna let this one slide. It's his memory.
Maybe late 72.
Possibly, but I'm like they didn't have any national distribution. You know, until March. So
72 or 73.
73.
Anyway, yeah, like, you know, he's probably fudging the year.
Yeah. So
Probably.
all right, just because I want to be extra mean, I'm putting this on here.
Damn right.
No Pong in Hawaii in 1972.
I tried to look for evidence.
Well, wait,
that there was Pong in Hawaii. He said, just to prove you wrong.
Hey, if you can find it, then we can correct the Department of Corrections,
I'll
because
certainly
that's
let
my
you-
identity. Alright, 1 hour later, as the rest of the class finished bowling, I had a new addiction that now lasted for nearly 30 years. Yeah, only
Meth.
playing Pong for all those 30 years.
Oh, I thought he was addicted to meth. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah, it's very common in Hawaii.
Behind the bowling alley, I discovered.
Oh, we're gonna get into defamation territory here. All right. 4 years later, I found myself playing Midway's gunfight with a friend named Ed when 2 of the best-looking girls from my high school class came up to talk with us. All right, so things getting steamy over here. As anyone who knew me in high school will tell you, that was not a common occurrence. I really wanted to talk to them. Ed really wanted me to talk to them too, but every time I looked away from the game, he shot me. In the end, gunfight won out, and I had proven my absolute nerdum. Also, gunfight 2 words. Can't slip that past me, Kent. This is a thorough takedown. We are not going to leave any stone unturned here. Researching this book gave me an opportunity to interview Dave Nutting, the man who modified Gunfight for the US market. Yeah, not modified Gunfight. It was
You might want to add pages to this to your list. Just saying.
Well, the thing is that the ebook doesn't split the pages in the exact same way. You know, this is not like I'm not gonna write this up as an article or anything. This is just like letting you know how many things we can get through this book.
Cool.
It's quite a bit, if you haven't caught on yet. And Al Alcorn, the engineer who built the first Pong machine. In fact, writing this book has given me the chance to meet most of the people who entertained me, addicted me, and caused me to spend an evening with Ed when I might have had more fun with Lisa. Okay. Who's Lisa?
Seriously.
Lisa Jobs?
Well,
One of the 2 hottest girls at the school.
What I found out
Sister
about
Ken.
these smart people was that the vast majority of them are kind, smart, and generous, with the exceptions of 3 people. Sam Trammell, Ken Kutaragi, and Hiroshi Yamauchi. All of the people I asked for interviews granted them and put up with the endless hours of repetitive questions. Though,
Holy Jesus, Kent. You called them all out by name in the acknowledgments.
yeah, I did not remember.
Special thanks to everybody but you 3.
I was told
I
that
didn't return my phone calls because I'm Stephen L. Kent. So, carry
Alex told me that he also asked Marty Bromley and got a no from him, but I don't know if that might have been like in the first edition or something. I have no idea how many changes were made from the first edition to, Ultimate History. I'm not gonna go around and look at every paragraph to find the distinction. In fact, such busy and important men such as Ralph Baer, who hasn't made anything worth talking about since the 90s, Nolan Bushnell, who hasn't made anything worth talking about since the 70s, and Al Alcorn, who Masaya Nakamura, Minoru Arakawa, Howard Lincoln, and Tom Zito, and several others granted me multiple interviews. At least some of those people were not busy. They... aside from convention appearances. Alcorn just, he teaches high school students how to solder. That's what he does nowadays.
He didn't get Tommy Tallarico.
I'm not sure if he might be in this book. I cannot remember. Man,
Probably not, but...
I mean, he gets some pretty strange picks. Once we get past the early chapters, you'll see some of them. In the end, much of this book was cobbled together from information I gathered from more than 500 interviews. I'm suspicious of that. Even in my college off time, I didn't have 500. While I would like to thank the people who generously donated their time for these interviews, many of which were several hours long, I feel it is equally important to thank the many people who helped me arrange everything. For every interview that went into this book, there was an average of 2 PR communications people working to put everything together. Over 500 people? That's 1,000 people.
I think he's counting, the homeless people he talks to at the bus stop to tell them that he's writing.
He might actually be inflating it just simply by saying each session counts as one interview.
I'm definitely thinking that's the case too, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're 20-minute sessions.
Interview?
What was that?
Does Yamauchi saying no to his...
Yeah, Yamauchi said no.
Interview?
Because he was retired and he didn't want to talk. So Sam Trammell, Ken Kutaragi, and Hiroshi Yamauchi. Those were the 3 people he said he talked to that said no.
Well, but does he count those as an interview?
Oh, yes. that would
Yes.
be... While writing this book, I find myself using a few published sources as well. One was Clov, the killer list of video games, which is located at clov.com. The people who created this amazing site do not receive advertising revenues and are not employed by the video game industry. They simply maintain this immense site out of a love for video games. And if you go to Clov today, you can still see the high standard of historical journalism that they hold. It's not very
See where the
high.
high water mark crashed in the distance.
I get a...
Cloth.
HTTP.
Hey, Dilly.
Hello.
Mr. Dilly
Hey.
Dillon has joined
Am-
us.
Am
You're
I-
on
am I-
you're on
am I
Twitch,
I'm
Mr.
on
Dilly.
Twitch.
Yes.
The Twitch.
The Twitch.
Wow. I'm so honored, honestly.
I know. It's
You're a star now.
very hard to get on Twitch.
Yeah, sign all those forms.
And
Exactly.
you can, you're a minor, so you can't even technically be on Twitch.
Yeah. Well, are you still...
All right. So we're continuing a read of the ultimate history of video games. And while I'm at it, I also relied heavily upon Phoenix, The Fall and Rise of Video Games, a brilliant book written by Leonard Herman, who used to be in this Discord server, and now he's not.
Oh, really?
Really?
What?
Yeah, he was here for a little while. We were chatting him up
Last
about stuff.
afternoon? Oh my goodness.
A little longer than that. As I was finishing this book, a friend suggested I call it a comprehensive history of video games. I could not do it. Lenny has already written the comprehensive book. That is not true. Neither of these books are comprehensive. Because they all forget about arcade games between like 82 and 92, and then they don't care about PC games like at all. So
we've conflated long with comprehensive here.
Yeah, it's like calling Pearl Harbor an epic. If you remember
I'm still
that.
trying to get over Leonard Herman, who missed his opportunity to watch Playing with Power with us. His loss, as far as I'm concerned. His loss.
Well, he has the Blu-rays now, so now he can laugh in all of our faces. That he can experience it at any time that he wants.
Oh man, I'm so jealous.
When I read Lenny, I have to think of Motörhead. So.
And while I'm at it, on many occasions I also referred to Game Over by David Sheff. While both Nintendo of America and Nintendo Company Limited in Japan have been very generous with me, I've never interviewed Hiroshi Yamauchi. I learned about him by reading the works of Mr. Sheff. Yeah, that's pretty much
Or Yamauchi.
Yamauchi is the correct pronunciation.
Already?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Like, I was pretty big on Yamauchi, but then when the guys from Japan came over, and I was hanging out with them, and I was like, Yamauchi, and they're like, what? And then I show them a picture, and it's like, oh, Yamauchi, yes.
Oh, so actually the U is an extension of.
Yeah, it's like a compressed vowel. Ouch.
So it should be written down as Yamauchi.
Yeah, well, there is still the U character, the U.
Still the U.
Yeah, that's still in there, if you wrote it out in kana. But it's just, it's one of these things about Japanese that's pronounced a bit differently. I wish to also thank the many people who helped me get this manuscript knocked into shape. I'm quite thankful to Lionel Klein, who transcribed most of my interviews. Also, I need to acknowledge the people who took their time out of their busy schedules to help me check facts. Amazingly, Al Alcorn and Steve Bristow were kind enough to read the chapters about Atari for me. Let's see how thoroughly they checked it. We'll get on that. John Romero helped me with the modern PC stuff. All he talks about is Doom, so it's like there's no modern PC stuff. Richard Brudvik Lindner.
Who's that?
I think like a marketing person. Helped with the Genesis years, and many others chipped in. It's like a Ellen Beth Van Buskirk from Sega. They all just had these nice compound names that they needed to put together. Because why have one last name when two last names are even better? One thing I have learned while working on this project is that the gaming community is filled with people who know an awful lot about history and will do anything they can to preserve it. Hey, he's talking about us! He's talking about us!
Ew.
Except it was 2001, so he's not talking about us. Sad face.
I wasn't even born then, so.
Poor Dilly. A number of people worked very hard to help me comb out the errors that have crept into my text. They didn't work very hard. I want to see the manuscript of this. If there were even more errors, all right.
Imagine what that draft looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Pong was created in 1978, and a month after that, Space Invaders appeared.
Like the E's are written backwards, and
when they first approached me to offer this help, I greeted them suspiciously. So that's what most people think of video game preservationists.
Let's be suspicious. Anyone who wants to help.
As we worked together, however, I realized that these folks did not want credit. They simply wanted to see history preserved correctly.
Oh, you took advantage of that then.
But they deserve credit. First and foremost, I wish to thank a gentleman at Colorado State who prefers to be known as Zoob. Anybody know Zoob?
No.
it's pronounced Zubai.
Zeb. Meticulous and with far too much time on his hands. Kent just likes to rip into people. Jesus. This fellow combed through my text and found pages of minutia and larger errors.
Jesus.
Stephen,
there are many Zoobs now. The world is now full of Zoobs, Stephen.
And wanting correction. There were moments when I cursed Zoob, but now I wish to thank him.
Isn't it weird that we're all a little underemployed over here, Stephen? We got some free time. You want us to read your new book, bud?
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Then there was Tim Ferranti of Game Room Magazine. One night, I prepared to send him my manuscript to Prima. Tim and I did a page-by-page search of the book. After 3 hours, I complained that I was tired, but he kept going. Only later did I realize that while I was in Seattle, where it was only 1 a.m., he was on the East Coast, and it was 4 a.m. for him. But did you do this over the phone? Like, a several-hour phone call to go through the book? Jeez. I also owe debts of gratitude to Kurt Vendel, rest in peace, Ken Gagne, and Lenny Herman, the true guardian of video game history. Wow, what a title. What a title.
Guardian.
Maybe that should be his title, rather than the father of video game history. And all the way through the process, I frequently relied on help from my good friend Jeremy Horowitz, one of the world's best connected video game player, now on his way to a fine career in law.
Is it player or players?
Best connected video game player. It's Jeremy Horowitz. I almost said Ken Horowitz, but that's another guy who's also here in the Gaming Alexandria Discord. I also want to thank Eddie Adlam, Ingrid Milkies, Key Snodgrass, and the rest of the staff at Replay Magazine, the real experts on the coin-op industry. Well, they are now because they're the only publication left. For taking the time to teach me about the workings of the arcade industry, and for lending me valuable photographs to enhance my book. They are very nice people. I contacted them because I interviewed Eddie. So, they're very nice. And they definitely have a better read on the coin-op industry than Stephen Kent. Anyways. Finally, I absolutely need to thank Steve Martin, David Richardson, and Andrew Vallis at Prima. These are the guys who shine up my work, and I am most grateful. Let's see how shiny we can get. Alright, we start off with a timeline. Let's see how many errors we can get just from the timeline. Alright. 1889, Fusajiro Yamauchi establishes the Murafuka Company to manufacture and distribute Hanafuda, Japanese playing cards. As far as I know, that's okay, so we're fine there. 1932, the Connecticut Leather Company is established by a Russian immigrant named Morris Greenberg to distribute leather products to shoemakers. Now, here's where I get to input just the nitpickiest of nitpicks here. Morris Greenberg, not the sole founder of Coleco, because I found the newspaper announcement where Coleco, like a new company has been established. He was not the only name on there, so that's my thing.
The other names like some unknown?
I don't really know who they are. If I looked, I probably could know more information about them, but I'm not.
Ethan,
yes.
do you have the month?
I probably do. I'm pretty sure I clipped it on my newspaper's account. Alright, we're pausing the stream because Carl wants me to go look this up.
I'm just saying,
Fucking 19th century
I might still be able to put it into an episode this year.
Let's see. To go back 80 years. Yeah, just
90.
No, 90. Oh yeah, 90. Yeah, I forget because let's
You have
see.
a 20s edition now? How come you haven't told me about this? Or the 30s edition?
Oh, I do. Actually, this next episode we're recording, I'm doing 51, 61, 71, and 81.
So it's
God,
March.
where am I in this?
March
I can get it
1932.
Okay, cool. March 32.
I'll put that in the voice chat channel. There's the clipping for you. So the other people, the other directors are his wife Frances Greenberg and a guy named Ralph Batista, who I think actually stays for a while. All right, back onto it. Yamauchi changes the name of Marufuku Company Limited to Nintendo, a term meaning leave luck to heaven. So there's a couple problems here. One, it doesn't say which Yamauchi. And then I'm pretty sure it wasn't that they changed the... it's not that they changed the name, it was kind of like a different company. It's a little complicated. I'm going to put a question mark on that one, but I know that that's not exactly right. You know, the leave luck to heaven thing has been sort of debunked, but at the same time, literally it means that, so I'm not going to get too up in arms about it. United States passes new laws regulating slot machines. Marty Bromley, who buys game machines at military bases in Hawaii, buys machines and opens service games. Not true! The complicated history of Sega is something into itself. So, service games opened 1946. September 1946, to be exact. So if you want to put that one on there, Carl, that'll be quite a ways off for you.
Wait, 51?
No. It doesn't happen.
Oh, 46.
Yeah, what happens in 51 is there's this thing called the Johnson Act that gets passed, which bans interstate transport of slot machines and also crane games for a while, because they thought they were the same thing. And then after this, 1952 is when Service Games Japan is opened. I need to look up the month for that. Hello, J-Rod. How you doing?
See in here.
We are doing a live read of The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen Kent.
Okay.
It's already very
Just call him
exciting.
with his middle initial.
Stephen L.
Always
Kent, yes.
Stephen L. Kent from now on. What's his middle name?
I have no idea.
Lashana.
Erwin's writing down all the discrepancies.
Yep. It's
Alright
cool.
then.
And we're on Twitch, so say hello.
Hello, gamers.
No, that's...
Are there any gamers in the
Ah.
audience here?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and join on the other side then.
All right. Okay, so on to the next part. Okay, sorry. David Rosen, returning from service in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War, opens a portrait painting business in Japan. I don't know exactly when that was because there's no records of it. So we're just going to assume he's correct. 1954, Rosen starts Rosen Enterprises and begins shipping photo booths to Japan. Again, no information to go off of, just what David Rosen said, and he won't talk to me, so... Yeah, I forget if I've said this publicly. I did send a letter to David Rosen, and he got someone to get in contact with me, and he said he's not really interested in talking. But he gave me a correction on my Periscope stuff, which, when we get to that section with David Rosen, I'll talk about.
Okay.
That won't be today, though. That's way too far in the book. 1956, Rosen imports $200,000 worth of coin-operated electromechanical games to Japan and starts the country's coin-op business. Not really true, because there were actual native Japanese who had coin-op stuff before this. Rosen starts Japan's coin-op business. There wasn't a lot of it by the time that he was doing it, but... he did not start it. I mean, even Service Games was already there. It's just they were mainly doing stuff in military bases. Alright, physicist William Higginbotham of Brookhaven Laboratories in New York invents an interactive table tennis-like game that is displayed on an oscilloscope. I object. It is a tennis game, not a table tennis game. Tennis game. Not table tennis. We're gonna, like, these are the kind of nitpicks that are making up this whole thing.
In a tennis game and a table.
1961, MIT student Steve Russell creates Space War, the first interactive computer game. Wrong. Space War is 1962. He didn't even have the ability to start in 1961 because he didn't have the monitor. He couldn't do shit.
Okay, I found the link.
Beautiful. 1962, Nolan Bushnell enters engineering school at the University of Utah. He graduates in 1968 because he transferred to another school and then came back. So he was in school for quite a while. 1964, Rosen Enterprises, Japan's largest game company, merges with Service Games, which now has jukeboxes in over 6,000 locations to form Sega Enterprises. Nope. Sega Enterprises was formed in July 1965. What happened in 1964 was the two companies that had split from Service Games Japan merged back together, and then they merged with Rosen Enterprises. They were going to merge with Taito, too, but that didn't happen. Also, all this stuff about Japan, and, like, nothing about the American coin-op business. Not a single thing.
Where's Europe? Or anything else?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you think this book has anything to say about Europe?
No, I know.
Well,
Is this just going to be the entire book?
I mean, I'm not going to do the whole thing today, but, like, yeah.
I mean,
am
like, is it going to be just like one giant timeline?
Oh, no, it's not. No, this is not the entire book. We're getting to the narrative parts after this.
Okay.
Nolan Bushnell gets a summer job at Salt Lake City Carnival, where he is in charge of the games midway. Yes, and I think that is actually right, 1965. One of the few times Nolan remembers a date correctly. Good job.
What is a games?
Well, a midway is like when you're walking through a carnival and there's like things on either side. You know, the passageway through the carnival is the midway.
Okay.
Ralph Baer
That's
begins.
what I was thinking.
What was that? Okay.
Continue on.
1966, Ralph Baer begins researching interactive television games at Sanders Associates. Yes, fixed date. Don't have to worry about that. 1966, Sega releases Periscope, a game that becomes such a hit in Japan that the US and European companies begin importing it. This is Japan's first amusement game export. Oh, no, it's not. That's a big error. Because of the high cost of shipping, US arcade owners charge players 25 cents per play, setting what will eventually become the standard price for playing arcade games. Periscope, not the first Japanese game export. I couldn't name you exactly what the first one was, but this was not the first one. I think no, Speedway comes after this, but yeah, Periscope was not the first. 1968, Ralph Baer patents his interactive television game. Wasn't just Ralph Baer, there were two other people on the project. So I'm going to count that as an error. Ralph Baer, not sole patent.
We can start assigning him Pinocchios.
I mean, some of this is
it's
just...
nitpicky. It's one Pinocchio. That one was like, it was a 3 Pinocchio. He'll hit some 5 soon. Don't worry.
Well, he never looked at these patents. I'm sure that he never even looked it up. So he's just going off what Bear remembers. 1969, Gulf and Western purchases Sega. Not true. This is a stupid, complicated correction, but Gulf and Western purchased Sega over a period of time. They bought stock in stages, basically.
Which is how it tends to be.
Right. But we actually have, like, the dates on when they bought all the stock. So, they did not have a controlling interest of Sega until 1970. 1969, Nolan Bushnell graduates from the University of Utah and accepts a job in California. Wrong. That is 1968. Nolan graduates December. Yeah, I don't know why he graduated in December, but that's something from the court records.
Because he flunked some classes and he had to pick some up in the next semester.
Right, and he did the switch over from the other
basically.
University. So
Just another shitty student.
hey, I had to take an extra year. I'm a good student.
Dude, I was in the 6-year Bachelor of Arts program. Don't talk to me.
I did an extra year by choice.
1970, Magnavox licenses Ralph Baer's television game from Sanders Associates. True, that's what... Well, no, actually, no, that's not true. Now I'm remembering because I had to work out this timeline. The Magnavox license first takes effect in 1971. Like, they had an... like, this... Oh, wait. What is this? No, oh, yeah, so that's right. So in Ralph Baer gets this wrong in his book because he gets the years off. But, like, the first meeting between Magnavox happens in 1970. They settle on an agreement in January 1971. And for some reason, 1970 is done twice on here, even though all the rest of them are just kind of contiguous. 1970, Bushnell begins working on an arcade version of Space War called Computer Space. Yeah, it starts in 1970. Alex has a whole blog post about that. The Atari Inc. guys don't believe that, but they're wrong. Calling you out, Marty. 1971, Nutting Associates purchases Computer Space from Nolan Bushnell and hires him to help manufacture it. The wording on that is weird, but it's basically right. Nutting begins shipping Computer Space, the first arcade video game machine. True. Magnavox begins demonstrating Odyssey in private showings. Bushnell attends the demonstration of the console on May 24th in Burlingame, California. The liar, liar, pants on fire, Mr. Bushnell. Bushnell leaves Nutting and starts Syzygy with partner Ted Dabney. Nope, not in... Oh, wait, is that 19... Okay, so we are in 1972. All right. With partner Deb Dabney, finding that the Syzygy name is already taken, they rename their company Atari. That's the story. There was at least one Syzygy company at the time, but it wasn't really in tech, so...
Didn't they do hot tubs?
I can't remember what the other one did. What?
I'm going with hot tubs.
They say it was a candle company, but that wasn't it. That was their neighboring tenant in the workspace that they chose. Atari engineer Al Alcorn creates Pong. Magnavox releases Odyssey. Magnavox sues Atari on the grounds that Pong infringes on Ralph Baer's patents. Nolan Bushnell decides to settle out of court. That is not in 1972, let me tell you. That starts in 1974. Suits. Sorry. 1974. All right. So now we're into the real shit. All right.
Do it.
We're still in the timeline, but we're gonna get somewhere. I promise you. 1973, Taito Williams and Midway enter the video game business. Also like a billion other people, but he just kind of skips over those. 1975, Atari creates prototypical home Pong unit and sells the idea to Sears Roebuck. Prototypical.
Nice.
That's an error there. I feel like his spell checker got him. He didn't like the name prototype.
Noob wasn't really
Nice.
good on prototypical.
And I'm just preempting this one. Incon did not make video games until 1976. They bought Atari Japan 1974. They were looking at what they could do, but they didn't actually get around to until 1978. I always mix up even numbers. I don't know why that is. Strapped for cash, Nolan Bushnell approaches venture capitalist Don Valentine for funding. I'm not sure Nolan Bushnell personally approached them. I think Don came to them, but and it might have been I think it was 1975, but I'm leaving that one to Alex. He's really interested in how things got funded. That's his main interest. He doesn't really care about games, really.
Is that gonna be a
Alex.
second kind of footnote, or are you gonna skip
All
it?
about the money.
No, I'm not putting that as an error because it might be true. I just don't know. Midway Games. It's not called Midway Games. Imports a Taito game called Gunfight. It's not called Gunfight. The first game to use a microprocessor. Taito's Didn't use microprocessor. I know the thing just entirely breaks when I do that, but yeah. I don't know why this was a secret before recently, but it was called Western Gun, not Gunfight. 1976, the Connecticut Leather Company, now known as Coleco, releases Telstar, a television tennis game. And it also had, like, a squash game and stuff on it, but, you know, I know what he means. Fairchild Camera and Instrument releases the Channel F, the first programmable home game to use cartridges. Oh yeah, in the new edition of the book, Kent recommends go watch High Score, where they interview Jerry Lawson's family.
For more wrong information.
Exactly. Exidy Games releases Death Race, a game which players drive over stick figures. Well, I mean, I guess technically they're stick figures.
Technically, it's monsters or
They're gremlins.
Gremlins, right?
Yeah, gremlins. So, you know, that's not an error, but, you know. Protests about the game are featured on 60 Minutes. It's not really protests, so I'm going to call that an error. Death Race didn't have protests. Or unless protest is being used in this very vague way, like people don't like something, so that's a protest.
I would like to see that.
Yeah, the 60 Minutes...
just be people on the street just be like, I don't really like this game.
I mean, there is, like, one news segment. It's not 60 Minutes, but it's another news segment where they do just kind of talk to people about stuff. Like, and at least one of the people, he's in the arcade, but he's like, I'm not really sure about this. And then the other people are just like, but whatever. It's just, we're just having fun. Bushnell sells Atari to Warner Communications for $28 million. And I did a correction of myself on the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine on exactly what the amounts were in cash and stock and stuff. 1977, Atari opens the first Pizza Time Theater, that's correct, later known as Chuck E. Cheese. Atari releases the Video Computer System, also known as the 2600, not then, but I'll let it slide. I'm gonna let it slide. I'm giving you this much, Kent. Can you hold on to that much? Can you? I'm not sure you can. Mattel introduces a line of LED-based handheld video games. Actually correct. The guy who made these video games is insistent it was 1976, but he's wrong. So, apologies to Mr. Mark Lesser, but it was 1977. Shigeru Miyamoto joins Nintendo. I believe that's right. Bally releases the Bally Professional Arcade home console. Wrong. Bally Arcade. They wanted to release it then, but they kept getting delayed because of chip problems. Nintendo releases its first home video game in Japan. Yes, true, but you didn't mention them when they... any other thing that they were doing aside from making playing cards, so this just seems very weird. Bushnell is forced out of Atari and buys the rights to Pizza Time Theater. Basically correct. Ray Kassar becomes the CEO of Atari. No, I think that actually waited until the next year. Kassar, CEO in 1979. Nintendo releases Othello, its first arcade game. Not its first arcade game. As we well know by watching Kate Willard's video on Wild Gunman, we should well know that Nintendo did arcade games well before they did video games.
Exactly.
Why didn't you watch the video, Kent? Because you hate Kate, that's why.
Exactly. So apologies to Kate Willard for the undue hatred by Mr. Stephen Kent. Man,
Don't forgive him, Kate.
Yes.
Atari releases Football and Midway releases Space Invaders. Both games attract record business. I'm not even sure, like, Football was a big hit, but I'm not sure it was really record big hit. This is one of these weird things that Kent claims that Football was like the #1 game until Space Invaders took it over. I'm not sure that's true, but I don't have enough information to tell him he's wrong.
It was his favorite.
It might be. Magnavox releases the Odyssey Squared. Unfortunately, in the ebook process, it didn't properly put it as a superscript, because if you put something as a superscript, it will automatically do a link to sources. So you have to format it in it. I found that out as I did my ebook. So.
But isn't this wrong? This is wrong, right? This is Philips introducing the video pack in 1978. Debatable if it's actually 1978 because of the power supply issue. This should be Philips. And Odyssey 2, the machine was 1979.
Nope, that's wrong. It was 19.
Is it?
We found advertisements and stuff. So Odyssey 2 did come out before the video pack. Actually, this is something that I did on Carl's show, where I said that this is an error introduced by Wikipedia. But yeah, the Odyssey 2 did come out before the video pack.
Okay.
Though you can quibble on whether it's actually Magnavox, because by that time they were produced by Philips.
And wasn't there this whole power supply issue where it got the machines recalled?
Yeah, that's from that one interview where he said it came out in 1978. But the Odyssey 2 didn't have that problem. Odyssey 2 had a problem with chips. They didn't, like, their chips weren't ready on time, so they launched later than they wanted to. But it was still like June 1978.
Okay.
I have some newspapers from that time period.
But it should be Philips.
Well, there's still technically a Magnavox office, a Magnavox brand, so I'm leaving that one. Cinematronics releases Space Wars, an arcade adaptation of the Space Wars game created at MIT. You got it right the first time. I don't know why you just didn't get it right the second time. Game not called Space Wars. It's called Space War! Exclamation point. Alright, 1979, Capcom is founded in Japan? No, I believe that's IREM. Because basically the guy who founds IREM gets kicked out of it because of financial problems, and then he goes on to found Capcom. Atari releases Lunar Lander, its first vector-based graphics game. Later that year, Atari releases Asteroids, the company's all-time best-selling game. Yes, believe that's all true. Well, best-selling game in the arcade. Yeah, I'm gonna put that as an error. Asteroids, best-selling game in the arcade. Atari game designer Warren Robinette introduces the concept of Easter eggs to video games by hiding a room with his name in the 2600 game called Adventure. But it did not come out in 1979. It is not 1979. This is probably where most people get that information. Is they look at Stephen Kent's book and they're like, oh, he put it in the 1979 part of the timeline. So we are gonna go and put it in. That's when it came out in 1979. That is Alex's litmus test of if you actually have a well-researched video game book or not, whether or not our adventure is put as 1980 or 1979. And already we're on a pretty bad litmus test for Mr. Stephen L. Kent here. But he is the one setting these standards, so we're not going to hit him too bad. Mattel Electronics introduces the Intellivision game console. Yes, in a test market. I'll let it slide. Milton Bradley releases Microvision, the first handheld programmable game system. Correct. Atari releases Space Invaders for the video computer system. The practice of selling home video versions of arcade hits is started. Well, they were doing it well before that. It's just that, they weren't, naming it the same thing. And, yeah, go watch Atari Archive, Mr. Stephen L. Kent. Come on. I hate this automatic thing.
Nice.
This thing does. It's for Space Invaders. Why hasn't he been paying attention to our research? Come on. Renegade programmers fleeing from Atari create Activision, the first third-party game publisher. Renegade. Yeah. They're real cool dudes, as you can tell. I'm surprised you remember the music from that game, because it's not a very memorable game.
I thought that was Tom Petty.
Oh. Oh. that song, okay. For all I know, that's the... Namco releases Pac-Man, the most popular arcade game of all time. Over 300,000 units are sold worldwide. Yeah, depends on when you're talking about. I think this is like post 2000 when they did like a re-release of it. I'm gonna put that as a question mark. Pac-Man, this thing, selling 300,000. Question mark. Minoru Arakawa opens Nintendo of America. I'm sure a lawyer did it for him, but I'm not gonna quibble on that. And Williams releases Defender. That is true. Most people like to put it as 1981, but they got their first units out in December of 1980, so that is correct. In 1981, Nintendo releases the arcade game Monkey Kong, or Donkey Dong, or whatever you would like to call it.
Never heard of it.
Funky Kong. That was one of the names. Atari releases Pac-Man for the video computer system. Wrong! DCS Pac-Man came out in 1982. Yeah, this is another one of those weird things where people didn't know the dates, and so they just kind of put them wherever. But they're wrong. Atari releases Tempest. Yep. That sure is a game that...
Why specifically that game to call out?
Because he likes it, I assume.
Right.
And he was able to interview David Toyer. I don't know why you didn't put Missile Command, but put Tempest. All right.
Much other stuff you could put there.
Tempest is like this trippy game that people really like. Jeff Minter really likes it, so, it must be good. U.S. arcade revenues reached $5 billion as U.S. Americans spend more than 7,500 man-hours playing video games. I think it was over 5 billion, but he said reaches 5 billion, so I'll let him go on that.
Who's counting?
Arnie Katz, Bill Kunkel, and Joyce Worley begin publishing Electronic Games, the first magazine about video games. Yep, that's right.
Exclusively about video games.
Exclusively, yeah. Oh yeah.
Separate from,
So I guess technically, since we did have these other video games magazines like I forget where. Kate did a thread on this, so I'm actually thanks for holding me up, to NC. We don't see. Electronic Games, technically. Not the first magazine about video games. Refer to Kate. She will tell you. In 1982, Coleco releases ColecoVision. Hooray! Atari wins lawsuit accusing Magnavox of infringing on its Pac-Man license with KC Munchkin. No, Atari did not win.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
Yes. A KC Munchkin lawsuit, and it didn't happen in 1982. The thing that they won was the injunction, which happened well before that actually resolved itself. So, yeah, calling you out, Kent, yet again. It's just calling out Kent all day. I went and dug up the court records. I'm a real gamer. Atari releases E.T. for the video computer system. Yep, it sure was a thing. Activision releases Pitfall for the video computer system. At this point, you can stop using video computer system, because they did rebrand it as the 2600 in 1982. Atari releases the 5200 video game console. General Consumer Electronics releases the Vectrex. Yes, because the one completely unimportant thing that he covers in this in this history is the Vectrex, just because it's so cool. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
It is bloody cool, yeah.
Midway releases Ms. Pac-Man, the biggest arcade game in American history.
Why is it now the biggest?
I don't know. Well, it's the cabinet that sold the most individual cabinets. That's what it means. So I'm gonna dispute that. You know what you mean by biggest.
Yeah, size.
Arcade game. Yeah, whatever that means. I'm putting the shade on that. When Warner Communications announces that Atari sales have not met predictions, Warner stock drops 32%. I'm pretty sure that this number is wrong, but I don't know what the number is, so I'm not gonna dispute on that. Nolan Bushnell opens an arcade company called Sente Games. Technically, it had been founded already as Videa in 1982. It's a bit complicated how it all came together. Like, he registered the Sente trademark as soon as he left Atari. But he said opens. Whatever, I'll give him that. Yu Suzuki joined Sega. The first game that he works on is an SG-1000 game. Championship Boxing. Surprisingly enough. And right below that, Sega releases its first home console in Japan, SG-1000. But no Famicom on here. Oh, that's why. Because he put it in the wrong date.
Damn. That's a big one.
Yeah. Famicom released. Like, was he trying to say something with that? Was he like, Nintendo was late to the party or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. Cinematronics releases Dragon Slayer, the first ever arcade game to feature Laserdisc technology. No! Quarter Horse! You must acknowledge Quarter Horse. Dragon's Lair, not first arcade game with Laserdisc. Everyone must respect the Quarter Horse. Former Philip Morris executive James Morgan replaces Greg Kassar as head of Atari. Yes, but he didn't get there for a couple months because he was wrapping everything up before he actually started his work at Atari, and that was a problem. But yeah, Nintendo releases the family computer Famicom in Japan. Nope, you are wrong. It was at the same time as this thing up here. David Rosen and Isao Kawa purchased Sega Enterprises back from Gulf and Western for $38 million. Yep, that's right. Coleco begins marketing the Atom computer. Nope. that is also 1983.
You should please correct your correction.
Oh, yeah. Where did that thing go? There we go.
That is hard.
2 monitors, Densey. How do people live like this? Alright. Hisao Gucci and Yuji Naka joined Sega. I don't know when Naka joined Sega, so I don't know if that's... Wait, when did Girls' Garden come out? Somebody look that up for me. When did Girls' Garden come out? Was it 1983 or 1984? Warner Communications sells Atari Corporation to Commodore Computers founder Jack Tramiel, but retains the arcade division as Atari Games. It's not called Commodore Computers.
Wikipedia can't decide either 84 or 85.
Okay, so 84. It's at least it's that rather than 1983. So that's all I needed to know. Jack Tramiel is the co-founder with Mr. Manfred Kapp. Again, another thing I did on the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine. Carl, did you just read this book? Is that where you're getting all your bad information from?
I do not believe that was the mistake you were correcting. I just accidentally said Jack Tramiel founder as opposed to co-founder.
I know, but it says right there, too. Founder, Jack Tramiel.
True, but I've never actually read Kent's book.
Okay.
So
hopefully this is an
experience
so
this
far.
Untarnished.
All right, Nintendo test markets the Famicom in New York as the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yep, that's right. All right, and then here's the big question. When was Tetris made? I think somebody did a Twitter thread on this recently. Like, they just decided that June 6, 1984 is when Tetris was made. Like, it was made, like, in a day. Don't believe that's true. It's a question when creation date. I think it's a question, like, traditionally it's 1984, but it might be later. Because, just like with the Breakout thing, it just seems like people are just kind of sitting on something until the next event in the story happens. So, like, what happens between the point where Tetris is made and then it's converted to the PC?
Wire decided as saying June 6, 1984 as the first playable game.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that there is a code of the original version floating around. I don't know if it actually says anything about that. So I'll have to check on that. But the date itself, I'm pretty sure, is made up. Because I remember there was a thread on this recently. Right. Nintendo of America releases NES nationwide. Yep, that's right. Sega releases its Master System in the US. Well, yeah, I guess the Master System is distinct from the Mark III. So, yeah, the Master System debuts in 1986. And Atari releases its 7800 game console. Yes, actually true. There was not a test market in 1984, probably. So, it was probably completed in 1984, but then they had to do some legal wranglings to actually release it in 1986.
Here, there's no mention of any home computer system.
Yeah, this is going to be a common theme throughout Stephen Kent.
This is video game history.
I mean, they keep saying that he did the computer game history as well, but yeah, not really. 1987, Nintendo publishes The Legend of Zelda in America.
Yeah.
Zelda published.
I pointed it out too. For the Netherlands, it's technically 1988.
What's technically 1988?
For the Netherlands, it's 1988, and everybody says it's 1987 because they base their information.
Yeah, European release dates are a whole nother world.
Are a tricky thing.
Yeah. NEC releases the 16-bit, 8-bit hybrid PC engine game console in Japan. Yeah, but the hybrid thing is a question in itself. But whatever.
Doesn't call the SNES a hybrid.
True. Yeah, that's the thing. Like I'm pretty sure that the Motorola 6800 is a 16-bit, 32-bit hybrid, but nobody calls the Genesis technically 32-bit. So. That's a weird semantical thing that makes no sense. Sega unveils the 16-bit Mega Drive game console? No, I don't believe so. They were like hyping the Mark V, but they hadn't finished it yet. So, not revealed in 1987. The Mega Drive, as it was said. Squaresoft publishes Final Fantasy. No, it was 1987.
And why no mention of?
Yeah, no Dragon Quest. It's never any Dragon Quest. Never. One day Dragon Quest will get its due.
Yeah.
And on that day we will celebrate. Dragon Quest is nice. I like Final Fantasy better, but Dragon Quest is the one that actually influences far more things. Atari Games releases unlicensed games for the NES under its new Tengen label. Did they do that in 87? Or did they wait until 88? Because, like, their officially licensed stuff happened in 87. Tengen... unlicensed 1988. Put that as a question mark. See, I don't know everything. I just know mostly everything. Enough to correct Carl. Tonka acquires the U.S. distribution rights to the Sega Master System. Yep, that's right. Coleco files for bankruptcy. Yeah, but they don't go bankrupt for a couple of years after that. 1989, NEC brings the PC Engine to the United States and releases it as the TurboGrafx. I believe that's right. I don't think it was 88. Hopefully I'm not wrong. Sega releases Mega Drive in the United States as Genesis. Yep, that's right. Nintendo releases Game Boy worldwide. Yeah, that was like the one console that ever came out like everywhere important at once. If it didn't come out in the Netherlands, then I'm sorry, Densi.
It sure did not. I'm not sure actually, but I think it's later. I think it's 1990.
Oh, okay. Then that's not a place that matters. Anyways.
Thank you.
Nintendo and Atari go to court over the rights of Tetris. I'm not exactly sure when they actually got into court, but I know the court thing started in 1989 because they needed to send out their intention of that they were going to publish it on the Game Boy, so Atari needed to stop doing it on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Court battle starts 1989.
Wow. Here's another blatant error.
Nintendo releases Super Mario Bros. 3, the most successful non-bundled game cartridge of all time.
This is wrong on so many levels.
What game? Like, I'm trying. If you're talking about pure numbers over all territories, and just game cartridges.
No. I'm mentioning this is the release year. It's totally wrong.
Oh, the release year. Yeah.
It's 1988 for
Japan. And it's 1990 in America. So okay. Yeah, I'll put that down.
It's 91 for Europe. So.
Super Mario Bros. 3. I have to make sure. I gotta get my Supa in there. Released 1988 Japan, 1991 Europe. But I think that's actually true, just in terms of sheer numbers and just cartridges. I think it is actually the most successful.
Time.
Yeah, all time. SNK brings the 24-bit Neo Geo game console to the United States. Why do people keep harping on the 24-bit thing? It's not important.
It's totally not important, yeah.
But yeah, they did release
and why not mention the creation of SNK at all in earlier years?
Yeah, they were totally not important, and the Neo Geo as an arcade game system was totally not like the most successful video game kit for years and years after that. 1991, Nintendo America releases the Super NES. Ugh, it hurts. It hurts. I mean, they did. I guess they technically didn't call it that, but I'm not counting that as an error. That's just something that the press said. They like to call it the Super NES. Ugh. It hurts me to say that.
But this is also wrong because it's 99.
All right. Well, no. Well, the Nintendo Entertainment System, that's right. The Super Famicom, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Super NES, only 1991 in America, then 1992 in most Europe. So.
Most of Europe.
I mean, that's right. I think in Britain it released in 91. But then 92 for a lot of the other territories.
It's definitely 92 for Netherlands.
I'm not. Yeah, whatever. So I covered my bases there. Okay. It might have released in 91. In some.
I am pretty not sure. I'm pretty sure it's not 91 for the.
Okay. So Dempsey corrected me live on stream here, making me look like a fool. And then.
No way. There's no way it's 91. No way.
Sega recreates itself with a new mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, they recreated themselves, just entirely around Sonic. Sonic is the only thing that they do. It's the only important thing Sega ever did. Galoob Toys releases the Game Genie. Carl, Carl, did you cover this in 1990? I can't remember.
No, I don't believe. Well, they might be right. Just because, remember, they wanted to release it and then they got the injunctions. So I don't know when the actual first release happened that got stopped by injunctions.
But yeah, I'm gonna assume this is correct. It feels correct.
I do have a gripe.
I mean,
why not mention Codemasters?
Because they don't matter. It's in Europe. It doesn't matter. I did have to correct Carl about the fact that Camerica was not part of Codemasters, but Carl does make sure to mention that the technology was by Codemasters. So thank you, Carl.
Well, Codemasters are important in this regard.
Yes. Not for any good games that they made, because they didn't.
Well, they did
Oh,
make
come
good
on.
games.
Micro
Come on.
Machines?
Yeah, Micro Machines. Some of them are good.
You gotta
Yeah,
give that.
games.
And you also have to remember, for cassette-based entertainment, especially on the ZX Spectrum, they had a ton of really good stuff.
Oh yeah, if
DMX
you lower the
Simulator, for
bar, then
example.
yeah, they made good games. Yeah, that's the entire story of Europe right there. That's why I like pissing you guys off.
Up jump then.
Just because we didn't have to spend $80 for a cartridge game doesn't mean that we weren't getting value for money.
But those games were better.
Just copy that.
Anyways, Capcom releases the arcade
I have
games.
3 letters for you. LJN.
I never said all of the time. Capcom releases the arcade game Street Fighter 2, giving arcades a needed boost. No, they did not. That was not. Street Fighter 2 did not turn around arcades. That is a huge myth. That is not true. They just kind of sucked the air out of what arcades were already there. There was Alex gets this wrong, is that there was no uptick in arcades after 1988. It did get bigger, but not just solely on video games. So I'm gonna say SF2 didn't boost arcades by itself.
And where? Because I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, it was pretty big all over the world, even Europe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I get what he's saying there, but at the same time, you're wrong, Kent. You're wrong. 1992, with Genesis outselling Super NES, maybe? There's a question mark on that. Sega effectively takes control of the US console market. No, that's not true. That had to wait until 1993, so they may have been outselling them, because Nintendo did not want to report how many Super Nintendos they were selling in 1992.
Right.
They reported how many NESs they were selling, but Sega did not have control of the console market.
Right. The fact that he takes control, that means you control everything, the whole narrative, everything that happened. That's just not true in any way.
Yeah. Sega ships the Sega CD peripheral for the Genesis console. Actually, this is a correction coming up on Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, so I'll just check my correspondence with Carl.
Yeah,
so...
Well, we haven't gotten to it yet, but yeah, the Sega CD...
Well, you did
gets
mention
shipped.
it in the last episode, so...
Did I say that they shipped in 91?
Yes. In the US.
Okay.
And you were wrong. So it was 92, so that's right.
I thought that 91... Okay, yeah.
You said
92
it... Basically, you're talking about the
in
games, and you're
Japan.
like, yeah, it was already out.
Gotcha.
So... Wrong,
So
Carl.
far, we have
But we'll get
seen
there.
no mention of Amiga or anything.
Yeah, it's computers, it's Europe, it doesn't count. Okay, Dancy? Don't see?
Yeah.
Alright. Do you see? Don't see? Alright. Panasonic begins marketing the 32-bit 3DO multiplayer. Unfortunately, that is correct.
Studio Interactive multiplayer.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's it. That's right actually. 3DO interactive multiplayer.
And they had a name for it. It was real.
Oh yeah,
It was yeah.
just put that on the side there.
Other things, nothing this timeline is CDI.
It's Europe. It doesn't count. All right.
Yeah.
Atari launch. I mean, he does talk about the story, the big story, but.
Right, but why is this? If it's such a pivotal thing, why is it not in the timeline? And why is Tempest releasing in the timeline?
You're really on that Tempest thing, but
Yes.
to be fair, I am also on that Tempest thing, so I'm not disagreeing.
You're the
with
one
you.
who first came onto the Tempest thing.
Atari launches the 64-bit Jaguar. Okay, the Blitter was 64-bit.
Right.
But all these other things, when you're talking about it, you're talking about the processor. The processor's not 32-bit on the Jaguar. But a lot of the other things had components which were more than 64-bit. So I'm gonna call this one out.
Ethan, you just didn't do the math.
Add this number up.
64-bit, the other bits. All right. Broderbund publishes Myst for Macintosh computers and other computers too, but he's right. It was published on Mac first.
It is kind of tied to Macintosh technology. So
Yeah, but it didn't get big on the Macintosh. It got big on the PC.
Right.
id Software publishes Doom for PCs. Yeah, I guess they technically published it. It was published by GT later on when they got it onto.
Yeah, but it's later.
Yeah,
shelves.
the retail.
Yeah. So, it still counts. Virgin Interactive Entertainment publishes The Seventh Guest on PC CD-ROM. Yes, unfortunately, they did. It is.
Oh, you're not a fan.
It reminds me though, when all the id Software games on retail, they make the distinction of id publishing all those games and say GT or Activision distributing them, which is an interesting touch.
Well, yeah, that's it's called an affiliated label program.
Yeah. Sub-licensing.
Sort of, but they're doing the publishing. They pay for all the back end, and if a product gets returned, the publisher takes care of that. The distributor, GT, is getting a catalog of games that they can offer to a retailer in bulk. So it was a very common thing in the 1980s.
Also, be very careful with the term sub-licensing. Because when you use sub-licensing, what it means is that you're transferring rights, the ability to make decisions to somebody else. And that's not really what happens with an affiliated label setup.
Senators Joseph Lieberman, Democrat of Connecticut, and Herb Kohl, Democrat of Wisconsin, launched Senate hearings on video game violence. Yep, they were both Democrats. Just in case you ever think that, only the Republicans make stupid decisions.
We know that.
In 1994, the Interactive Digital Software Association is created in response to the Senate hearings. It's not called the IDSA anymore, but it was at the time, so that is fine. Nintendo releases Donkey Kong Country and retakes control of the US console market. Yes, it was only Donkey Kong Country. It wasn't the fact that Sega was totally dropping the ball.
Yeah.
I'm calling that one out. DKC did not cede control to Nintendo.
What does it even mean? Retake control. Why is it even important?
Well, you get what he means. It's flowery language. It's not meant to be precise. Sega releases the 32X, a peripheral that increases the power of the Genesis. Quote unquote, increases the power.
Yeah, I disagree with increase.
But its technical specs do make it better. But nobody had any time to develop for it, so. Sega releases the Saturn in Japan, yep, and Sony releases the PlayStation in Japan. No mention of Sony before this, Sony's just there.
Yeah.
Sony releases Saturn in the United States. Sony releases PlayStation in the United States. I don't know, like he's
That's
suddenly like
interesting,
really big on this, just like mentioning when it comes out in Japan and then the United States. Nintendo releases Virtual Boy in the United States and everywhere else too. So
No, not everywhere else.
okay, did you in Europe? Did it wait until 1996?
There was never a release of the Virtual
Oh, I didn't know. I thought there was like a European exclusive game or something.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Never released.
Okay, you got saved that horror. But so this is correct
Yes,
because it just says United States.
Well, where's Japan?
Well, it didn't say Japan, so I'm not counting it as Japan. Nintendo unveils 64-bit Nintendo N64 game console in Japan. I guess that's right. They revealed that they were doing a partnership before that and all this stuff, but yeah, technically that's right. So
Should be Ultra 64.
well, it was Nintendo 64 by the time they unveiled like the full
Oh, really?
specs. Yeah.
Sure.
Pretty like
I am
Shoshinkai.
unsure
It was still.
full.
Oh wait, was that right? Okay, so I guess actually, yeah, that's right. Revealed as Ultra 64. Yeah.
Ultra.
Much better name.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not really sure. But,
That is bad.
Nintendo discontinues Virtual Boy. They don't mention discontinuing of anything else, but the Virtual Boy. Sony unveils Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, I guess they unveil it and they also release it.
Yeah.
Sega discontinues. Okay, no,
96 for Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, 96.
That's catchy.
Yeah.
They unveil
96.
96, yeah.
Oh, they unveil it.
So
Yeah.
discontinues.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Andy and Jason made a big deal of missing out on E3 95, so
Oh, okay.
like every single E3 after that, we're going.
Here's a blatant error coming up.
Sega discontinues Saturn. Did they actually discontinue it? Like they weren't making anymore?
No.
I don't believe
I'm
that's true.
Sure it is not.
Carl.
Cannot be true.
Yes, what's
Do you-
going on? What's
do you-
going on?
Do you know if Sega discontinued the Saturn in 1997?
Let's see. You get Stoller giving his speech about
Yeah,
how
but that's
Sega's
it's not a
the
it's
future.
however
That's in
much that speech
98.
really had anything to do with anything, and people just kind of
Of
put it-
course.
you know.
But I'm just saying, does he give this speech if the Saturn's already been discontinued? The speech doesn't make any sense in a world where the Saturn's already been discontinued.
Yeah, but it could have been later
So-
in the year. But I'm gonna put that as a question mark because I don't.
But I think that speech happens in '98, or even no, it wouldn't have been early '99. It would have been '98.
Yeah, because he was
even-
out before Dreamcast.
Well,
launched.
because I reported on it on the show, and we
Mhm.
started in November of the 8s. So I couldn't have covered it if it was in '97. So it had to have been '98, '99.
You know, it'll be interesting to come around to that story, and be like, and
You have games releasing in Japan well into '99.
Well, just because they're releasing games doesn't mean that they haven't discontinued
Right.
the hardware.
so
Could
they,
be true.
yeah, because Dreamcast, like there were games coming out for the Dreamcast after it was totally discontinued, so that is possible.
Yeah.
I'm putting that as a question mark because I just don't know. Bandai releases Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi.
Was that 97? I think it's 97, but I just can't remember if that's actually right.
It sounds. What? There's no mention of. Continue.
Tiger releases the Gamecom handheld system.
That's notable.
Is that right? I mean, yeah, that is definitely something that. Why is it here? But yeah, that's right. I'm trusting Wikipedia on this one because I honestly don't care about the Gamecom.
Would you?
What was that?
No, continue.
Gunpei Yokoi. Okay, so this is technically right. Saying Gunpei is technically right. I mean, it's technically Gunpei. But the N sound, it can be written as an N or an M. So that is not wrong, technically. So
What comes
Gunpei
after
Yokoi.
that is wrong.
Gunpei
Creator of
Yokoi,
the
creator of the
Game
Game Boy, dies in a car accident. Yep, so.
Not the
Yokoi,
creator of the Game Boy.
not sole creator of Game Boy. You can quibble on the edges of how much he did, but Okada, I wouldn't call him the creator. There's
I'm
several
sure they're all
people involved. So, yeah, so we'll correct that one. DreamWorks, Universal, and Sega team up to form a new line of super arcades called GameWorks. I'm not sure how super they were, but
Why is this notable?
Well, GameWorks, like the first location opened in '97, but talks were like throughout '96.
So yeah, I guess technically they had teamed up before that. So
Yeah.
we're just
And in fact, it was probably not as many people as you would expect, because DreamWorks and Universal were pretty close together anyway.
So
like all those executives were in bed with each other, basically.
Well, and also the other thing to remember, this was the big deal with GameWorks, was they were going to have exclusive giant games that were just for their locations. Like they had that one thing, I can't remember what they called it, where they lifted you up. If you shot enough people, then they lifted up, and then when the game ended, they dropped you from the height that you were at.
I've got the launch party video up right now. Yeah,
and that thing, I remember the hype around it because I was actually working at an arcade in Seattle, and we were like 30 minutes from where the GameWorks was going to be installed. And it was just this concept of, oh, we cannot compete against this. This is where the arcade business is going, because we cannot attract people with a normal arcade game anymore, because PlayStation's out and the games look just as good at home as they do in the arcades or close to it. And so this is how arcades were going to survive, with this kind of stuff. Obviously it didn't work out that way, but at the time it really seemed like this was going to be the idea that was going to pop.
Doesn't that sound so familiar, though? Arcades doing basically the same thing as movie theaters keep trying to do.
Yeah, but movie theaters didn't crash nearly as hard as arcades after that.
Well, it did. Well, it did in like the '60s.
Well, it did in the 60s, but it still didn't die out the way arcades did. And I think the reason for that is the constant flow of easily accessible product. So it's in an arcade, you always had a niche, as opposed to linear storytelling is more universal. And once you start getting into more complex things like fighting games, I mean, we saw this in the arcade constantly, where we'd get the brand new cool fighting game, and after a week, basically the noobs didn't touch it. They avoided it, because you'd have a couple of kids in there who would just basically kill everybody, and as soon as they saw a noob put in a quarter, they immediately jumped in, and it was like, yeah, screw it. So I think that the arcade, that balance of accessibility and at the same time coin drop, very, very difficult to manage, and ultimately they just couldn't do it anymore. Sorry, that was a diatribe. Ethan, please go back.
This is good.
It's really important in context.
Yeah. I mean,
I like this cross
factor.
I like this cross of information between Carl and Jacob around DreamWorks or the GameWorks.
I mean, you're not going to see this. You're not going to see that kind of stuff in the cinema unless you go to one of those specialty viewings of like Rocky Horror or whatever that other one was.
What was the other cross-dressing one? It was the can't remember, but yeah, I mean,
you guys go on with this.
Going to a midnight showing of Rocky Horror, but the difference is that you're not going to get kicked off after 2 seconds because some other person, does the can with their leg higher in the air than you or something. It's everybody's an equal in it, whereas arcades fell into the bad trap of the competitive gameplay. We went from everybody, helping each other out, where the really cool kid helped you survive longer in TMNT or Double Dragon or whatever. Whereas Street Fighter meant the cool kid now just basically shortened your value proposition. And I still remember the operator that was putting the machines in our arcade. I had this conversation with him, and he had been in it since the late 70s, and he was telling me, yeah, the fighting games, they make good coin drop, blah blah blah, but how many more ways can you figure out to beat the crap out of each other, and at what point are you not going to get the kids anymore? And that's basically his prediction came true. Sorry. Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah. That's great. This is the kind of commentary we want running through this. All right.
In that case, then, let me tell you, I've got all sorts of notches.
You got your own podcast, Carl. Come on.
Hey, it's 11:30 at night over here, okay? My brain is just wandering from topic to topic.
Nintendo...
Great opinion columns. No, what?
Sorry, I'm a little bit new here, but...
We're doing a read-through.
I just decided to join in because I'm bored.
You come to the right place.
Well, yeah, welcome to the crowd.
So yeah, I'm seeing the screen right now, and I thought they discontinued the Saturn in early '98.
Yeah, I felt that was wrong.
We weren't sure either.
So I need to look that up.
Yeah, we got the
97 seems too early.
Right.
And then I feel like GoldenEye 007, I guess it is a good choice because it is it did revolutionize console FPSs. There's a lot of great games that were released in '97. Star Fox 64, Mario Kart 64, especially if you are talking about the North American and European releases.
Yeah, but if this guy was being thorough, then these year things would take up 2.5 pages.
Yeah, this is just a summary, is it? It's a summary of what happened.
Trying to hit the important dates, like when Tempest came out.
Okay. All right.
So, releases GoldenEye. Squaresoft publishes Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation. Or for PlayStation, because it's not the PlayStation, it's PlayStation. PlayStation.
I have a few more things I think this list really missed out. One, it's Quake 96.
If it's PC, if it's Europe, it just doesn't matter.
The other thing is the growth of graphical of the GPUs, which is really around this time frame, is something that is pretty significant.
I do feel like it's a bit hard in that moment when he publishes the original version of this 2000. I think it would have been a little bit hard to realize how much that was going to change things. But at the same time, like I said, he does not care about PC games except Doom. Space War and Doom. That's all he cares about.
Yeah.
Which is weird. He brings
space,
Peter Molyneux to do
here.
the intro. Anyways, Nintendo releases The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for the N64 in Japan. Densey, did it come up then in Europe?
I'm pretty sure it did release in '98. I'm pretty sure I picked it up.
I'm pretty sure it released in '98, worldwide.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Because if you look at the build dates for each version of Ocarina of Time, because it is one of those games that has a built-in build date on the ROM, they're literal days apart.
Yeah.
Pokemon, a line of Game Boy role-playing games that have ignited a craze in Japan, comes to America and starts a similar craze.
And Europe.
American.
Yeah, but he's only specifying America. So you gotta give him the credit.
So Canada didn't get it.
Of course. JTS files for bankruptcy and sells Atari properties to Hasbro Interactive. I'm not sure. Did I don't think JTS filed for bankruptcy. This is a super complicated thing. File bankruptcy. I'm gonna
Another big
leave
hit
that.
for 98 is Half-Life. No mention.
1998 was a ton of things.
Yeah, 98 is
It
like
should
one of
be a
those.
lot longer than
1998 is like 2007 and like
97.
1985. Like it's like one of the like
Yeah.
hugest years in video games.
One of the, he's like, yeah. I call it the golden year.
Pivotal.
SNK Corporation brings he specifies the Neo Geo Pocket Color as an important event of being brought to the
Why?
United States.
I mean,
okay.
There's not even
it's
links
the
on
biggest
here.
competitor to the Game Boy Color, but it still flopped hard. Like, yeah, I don't get it either. Never heard what a Neo Geo Pocket Color was until like
I would have
a
loved
few
one.
years ago or something like that.
I would have loved to have one, but yeah.
I mean, I would too, but there's like so few games for it though.
Pirate.
All right. Sega releases the Dreamcast game console in the United States. Yep, that's right. $99.99. Never forget. Toshiba and Samsung announced plans to sell Nuon-equipped DVD players. Okay. What an event! The Nuon. Who remembers the Nuon?
No mention of DVD itself, but new one.
Yeah.
Sony releases the PlayStation 2 in Japan and the US.
Believe it was March 2000 in Japan,
Yeah, March.
and then
Definitely.
October 2000 in the United States.
Yeah.
I believe it's later in 2000 for Europe, and it costs a shit.
Microsoft unveils plans for the Xbox console at the Game Developers Conference. Sega launches SegaNet internet service for the Dreamcast. No, wasn't SegaNet earlier than that?
SegaNet, I believe, started in 97 or something like that for the Saturn. But with the Saturn, you needed like a adapter that connected to the cartridge port. Dreamcast was the first video game console to have built-in dial-up, but
Right.
using the SegaNet service, I believe, started in
99.
97.
Well, for the Dreamcast, it's saying specifically. So yeah.
Yeah.
So that's two things. SegaNet launched earlier than Dreamcast. SegaNet launched for Dreamcast in 1999. Yeah, that's just a weird thing to get wrong. I don't.
I mean, to be fair, the Saturn is like still one of the more obscure consoles, despite being like a major console. Okay, what I was trying to say is like it's selling more poorly in the United States and Japan. Like, the United States is such an important, why was I going to say state? Country to like sell your units.
The important state
Like
of the
Japan
United
is not
States.
as important as people would think, despite like 2 out of the 3 major game companies today being in Japan. 4 if you count Sega. So yeah. So only Microsoft was not a Japanese company that's produced video game consoles, besides stuff like the 3DO, but we're not going to go that obscure.
Well, it is in this
It was
timeline.
brought up.
So
It is in the list.
Yeah.
Sony launches PS2 in the United States. Why are these two? Why is this here and why is this here?
It's
Yeah, that's what I was
I guess we're in
saying.
chronological
Like,
order
yeah,
within
but,
the year.
month.
If it's if it's in
Except
a chronology,
that he wasn't doing that
there's lots of
before.
stuff
I can
around.
guarantee you
Yeah.
that. SNK discontinues
gonna
the Neo
skip
Geo
over that?
Pocket Color in the United
You
States.
know what? I think he's biased towards the Neo Geo Pocket Color and is salty that the Game Boy Color sold a lot more.
It's the Tempest.
I
He doesn't
think
even
that's what
announce
it is.
that the Game Boy Color exists. 2001, Sega discontinues Dreamcast. Sega
Just
chairman
in time for Sega's 10th anniversary, too, and the release of Sonic Adventure 2.
What do you mean 10th anniversary?
10th anniversary of Sonic in general.
Oh,
back
Sega. Okay.
when
Sonic.
it was-
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, Sonic.
I'm gonna double check the Sasakawa thing because I can't remember if he died the year before. Okay, yeah, it was 2001. So that's right. It was before they did the announcement of discontinuing Dreamcast.
Yeah, see, look at that. Nintendo releases Game Boy Advance to Japan.
Yeah,
March
no Game Boy Color.
Why didn't they do that for
and they have the dates.
PlayStation 2? Like, what?
Nintendo releases GameCube in the United States, and Nintendo releases Xbox worldwide. Okay, so Nintendo didn't release theirs worldwide? Like...
It's a mystery.
All right, that's the end of the timeline. Finally, Jesus, that took forever.
Looks a pretty random timeline.
Yes, that was an adventure. I think he was just priming us for what the world was going to be.
World before Pong.
The world before Pong. Densey, will you read this quote for me?
Sure. You can't say that video games grew pinball, but you can assume that video games wouldn't have happened without it. It's like bicycles and automobiles. One industry leads to the other, and they side. But you had to have bicycles to one day have motor cars. Stephen Baxter, former producer, the CNN Computer Connection.
A very strange person to open the book with, but it's not the worst in the world. The beginnings of pinball. New technologies do not simply spring out of thin air. They need to be associated with familiar industries or ideas. People may have jokingly referred to the first automobiles as horseless carriages, but the name also helped define them. The name changed them from a nebulous, unexplainable machines to an extension of an already accepted mode of transportation. Although video games are a relatively new phenomenon, they benefited from a close relationship with a well-established amusement industry. You see, this is actually good commentary to open this up with. Except this is before Pong, so I'm not sure where he's going with it on that front. The amusement industry, in turn, has long suffered from a lack of legitimacy. As it turned out, however, legitimacy would never be much of an issue for video games. Never? I'm not sure about that. The beginnings
or social acceptance. How should we read legitimacy?
The beginnings of pinball can be traced back to Bagatelle. Oh, yeah, good thing Dale's not here. he would be flipping out right now. A form of billiards in which the players used a cue to shoot balls up a sloped table. The goal of the game was to get the balls into 9 cups placed along the face of the table. Abraham Lincoln was said to have played Bagatelle. We're not sure if he actually did. There's just like this political cartoon where he's playing Bagatelle. We don't really know like what it's about. Let's see whether or not whether or not Lincoln did in fact play the game. An old political cartoon shows him playing it during his presidency. You see, why are you being good now, Kent? Why are you preempting my thoughts? No surviving.
The editor only looked at the text content, did not look at the timeline. That was the last minute thing.
No surviving records explain why cue sticks and bagatelles were replaced with a device called the plunger, but for some reason evolution took place and the game transformed into a new sport called pinball before the turn of the century. Okay, no, this is so wrong. Oh, this is really bad. Yeah, there's no documents, but we can see why a plunger exists, because it's just more convenient than hitting it with a cue ball up the ramp. So yeah, and it's not pinball before the turn of the century. Before the turn of the century, presuming that the century is the 20th century, and there is a reason for the pinball plunger. If one event paved the way for today's computer and video game industry, it was David Gottlieb's Baffle Ball. No. There was way more before that. Baffle Ball, not foundational in the arcade industry. Baffle Ball sold a lot. That's pretty much its claim to fame. It was the first pinball I got everywhere. But aside from that, not much. The founder of D. Gottlieb and Company, Dave Gottlieb, was a short, stocky man with a full head of brown hair. I'm not sure it was a full head. I have a picture of him somewhere. I think he was already balding by that point, but anyways.
You gotta love how these people get to be described.
And an ever-present cigar. Yeah, we'll see how the Nolan Bushnell one lines up. And an ever-present cigar in his mouth. A showman and an innovator, he once made a living by taking carnival games to oil workers in remote Midwestern oil fields. I haven't double-checked all this, so I assume this is kind of right. He understood the balance of skill and chance that made games fun, and had a talent for refining game ideas and making them more fun. In 1931, Gottlieb created a game called Baffle Ball. No, he didn't create the game. It was just a rebranded version of a game he was already selling, called Bingo. Baffle Ball used no electricity and bore little resemblance to modern pinball games. It was built in a countertop cabinet and had only one moving part, the plunger. Not true, because you also need a moving part for the ball return. Pinball ball returns, also a moving part. Oh yeah, and the coin mechanism technically moves too. Admittedly, when I was on the podcast talking about the birth of pinball, I did say pinball doesn't have, only has one moving part, so I did screw that up, but, you know.
We forgive you.
Or at least I said, things on pinball don't break, except the plunger. Player used a plunger to launch balls into a plane set on a 7-degree slope. Is it really that shallow? I don't know.
I don't know.
These early pinball games were shallower than the modern ones, so yeah, 7 degrees might be right. And studded with pins, circling 8 holes or scoring pockets. And the scoring pockets were metal-lined on Baffle Ball because it was a copy of Bingo, which was a copy of Whoopee, which is a great name for a pinball.
Whoopee.
Go listen to that podcast, Ozon. Come on.
I'll give it a listen.
Each scoring pocket had a certain point value attached to it. For a penny, players could launch 7 balls. 7 whole balls.
A lot of balls.
Baffle Ball did not have flippers, bumpers, or scoring device. Players kept track of scores in their heads, and also by just kind of looking at the...
Yeah, looking at the amount.
Yeah, there was numbers on there.
Right.
Once they launched the ball, they could control its course by only nudging the entire Baffle Ball cabinet, a technique later known as tilting. Sometimes they tilted so forcibly that the entire Baffle Ball cabinet could slide several inches during a single game. I mean, I guess, but that would be really tilting it.
Is it really that light?
Yeah, I mean, it's a countertop game, so it's
Right, yeah, you could easily lift it.
Yeah, it's the size of a monitor, basically. So, yeah, you could just lift it, but if a proprietor saw you doing that, he would have told you to cut that shit out, because
certainly,
especially if they were doing a gambling thing, they would have told you to cut it out. At first, Baffle Ball sales grew gradually, but within months, Gottlieb's game became a major success. By the time the game reached peak popularity, Gottlieb shipped as many as 400 cabinets a day, and that makes it interesting. Because the claim is that they sold 50,000 of them. So he would have had to have that capacity going for 100 days straight on one game. And he had several games going at the time, so...
That's a lot of stuff.
Gottlieb, the first person to successfully mass-produce pinball cabinets in a factory. No! That is... Bingo was doing it before that. Not first to mass produce. And even technically, Wiffle was doing it before that. I don't know how many they made, but I know that they set up a factory before Gottlieb even knew what a pinball was. Became the Henry Ford of pinball. That might be true. He was really good at manufacturing. His competitors worked out of their garages and couldn't compete. J-Rod, could you read this one?
Imitators popped up immediately, more or less. I mean, everyone got involved in the business, and like I said, there were a lot of people building them in the garages. Gottlieb machines were a little more expensive. I think it was $16.50 for the machine, and that was $1 or $1.50 more than the competitors. But my grandfather used a better version of walnut. I think the pins were a higher quality metal. He wanted it to be the Cadillac of pinball machines.
Michael Gottlieb, grandson of David Gottlieb, another person I have interviewed. I talked to him recently about some of the later stuff that he did at Midway, because he became chief producer there. He was very insightful. He's a guy who knows his stuff, and we're hoping to get him for Arcade Dreams so we could talk about some of this. But $16.50 was the standard price for pinball. And it was not set by Gottlieb, it was set by another guy named Charles Cheesewar. I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but it's a Polish name, so. Once Gottlieb proved money was to be made, imitators followed. David Rockola created several successful pin games before establishing the company as one of the most famous names in jukeboxes. I guess that's technically true. He himself was kind of a game man, and then just jukeboxes kind of took over. Pin games is a slang term for that members of the amusement industry often use to describe pinball games, among many other things like pin table, and marble games was one of the popular ones.
Good name.
Of course, you in Europe only know the flipper game.
Flippers. Flipperen.
Yes. Le Flipper.
Le Flipper.
Ray Maloney's first pinball machine, Ballyhoo, sold so well that he changed the name of his company from Lion Manufacturing to Bally. Also wrong. Lion did not change its name to Bally. Bally was a label of Lion until Lion went away and then was reformed, and that's a different story. Gottlieb's chief competitor was Stanford-educated Harry Williams. Having studied engineering, Williams brought a deeper understanding of mechanical workings to the industry. He entered the business as a West Coast distributor selling other companies' amusement machines, but discovered, I think he was an operator. Yeah, so I'll put that. But discovered he could purchase used pinball games and refurbish them with playfields of his own design for much less than it cost to buy new ones. He didn't do that until after the war, so this is way out of the explanation here. So, Harry was an operator, not a distributor. Williams didn't refurbish until post-war. In 1932, Williams decided to make pinball more challenging by limiting the amount of body English players could use.
What does that mean?
He's saying tilting. So, the English and tennis is like how you can turn the ball and whatnot. But yeah, forget what this table is called. Advance was not 1932. I'm not sure, it's normally put as 1933. I went looking, and I'm not sure it was 1933 either. There's very few references to it at all, but it seems like it existed. He designed a table with a device that contained a metal ball with a pedestal on its base. If players nudged the machine enough to knock the ball off the pedestal, the game ended. He originally called his device Stool Pigeon. That's true. But when a customer complained that the machine had tilted, Williams decided to call it the tilt mechanism. Not true. Tilt mechanisms already existed.
Oh, really?
Yep. In fact, there's an earlier pinball that had the same style of tilt mechanism. It was a Rockola game, World Series. Again, I talk about this on the podcast. Existed in coin-op games. But even before pinballs, there were tilt mechanisms. I really need to turn off that thing that does the strikeout.
It's quite annoying.
Yeah. He tested his innovation in a game called Advance. Williams later refined the tilt mechanism by replacing the ball on a platform designed with a pendulum device, which has been present in nearly every pinball game made since. I'm pretty sure they changed it after that too, so I'm not sure that's true. In 1993, Williams built Contact. Nope, Contact was 1934. I have plenty of ads about that. The first electric pinball machine. Not the first pinball with electricity. Basically everything that you could think of in pinball already happened in 1932. It's just they did them in really weird ways. Like, there were flippers in 1932. But they're weird flippers that aren't like the flippers we have now.
Weird flippers.
Yeah. Go look up the table double shuffle sometime. The name Contact referred to the electrical powering scored pockets, called contact holes, which knock the ball into the playfield to continue scoring points. Like the tilt mechanism, well, you can't continue to score points because all you do is get it into a hole. And once it's in the hole, your game's over. There's no bumpers or anything. So yeah, you don't get any points for getting in the hole. So yeah, you don't continue to score points from the contact kickouts. Ah, this thing. I really need to fix it. Like the tilt mechanism, electric scoring pockets became a standard for pinball that is still used today. Alright, Densey.
Alright. Previous to contact, the skill for the player would put the ball up on the playfield, would roll around, and hope that his aim was such that the ball would somehow magically weave its way around through the pins that were nailed to the playfield. With the contact hole, you still needed to have some precision to get the ball into the cup, but getting the ball into the cup gave you something back. There was a sound, there was motion. Part of the fascination people have with pinball comes from those opportunities where the game takes over and does things.
Roger C. Sharp, author, Pinball. Another person I have interviewed. What does it say down here? Readers interested in learning more about the history of pinball and seeing its color and pageantry should look for Pinball by Roger Sharp. We'll be meeting him in November, face to face. He is a very nice man.
Cool.
Payouts. Though he was well aware of Harry Williams' innovations, a different development frightened David Gottlieb more. Slot machines manufacturers began making pinball-like machines called payouts, which combined pinball and gambling. You know, this is super ironic, because the first pinball that would have had an integrated payout was a Gottlieb table. It doesn't appear that they actually put it in, but yeah, this is pretty funny. So Gottlieb wouldn't have been scared by payouts because Cloverleaf was supposed to have one.
Right. I'm pretty sure they weren't surprised that this was happening all of a sudden. You know.
I mean, it was like around that time. They 1993 is when Bally puts out Rocket, which is an electrical powered payout. So that was happening, but
Right.
I don't think Gottlieb cared that much. I think he just didn't get in the door fast enough. That's why he wasn't much for it. Gottlieb saw these machines as a threat to the entire industry. Payout machines first appeared in the crime-conscious 1930s, and Gottlieb suspected that politicians would outlaw the new machines and anything associated with them. Yes, there was a certain amount of skill involved, but basically the law looked at it as a gambling device. Payouts started out legally in many states and eventually ended up being operated mostly illegally in places where the police would look the other way, such as New Orleans. they were nickel games, by the way. They paid off in nickels, so it was little gambling, but nevertheless, it was gambling. A lot of them were penny machines, really. Another person I've interviewed, Eddie Adlam, publisher of Replay. So first 3 people that get block quotes in this book, I have interviewed them.
Despite everything that you've been writing down on the other list.
What about it?
That the main quotes come around parts of the story that you're still picking out interesting discrepancies from.
Right. It's all, just as we go. And it goes all the way back to... The first page actually has an error. This one you'll like. It says Mark Cherney was the co-creator of Crash Bandicoot.
He likes to call himself the co-creator of Crash Bandicoot, although, the way that the team was, they can all call themselves whatever they want, really.
I'm sure my teacher who worked on Crash Bandicoot.
I think the main person who would discount that would be Dave Ziller, because he said that Cerny was too busy with Insomniac doing Disruptor, but I don't know.
Yeah, my teacher wouldn't claim to be the co-creator. He was just kind of a technical help person.
Yeah.
On Crash Bandicoot. He's credited under his pseudonym on the original Crash, but it's something like Goosh, something. Yeah, it's a weird amalgamation of his name. Let me look this up because it is kind of fun.
Like on the Sony side of things.
Yeah, he was a hardware person on PlayStation. So let's see.
Yeah. I think I did remember seeing a couple pseudonyms on there.
Don't know why, but so he has 2 different things on Moby Games.
I had actually just made sure that the credit was corrected to say that Morgan was not the last name of Charlotte Francis.
It's Angus Gashwan. His name is Bill Gashwan, but for some reason he went by Angus for most of his Sony games. Oh yeah, he also was part of 3DO first, so he also helped with Way of the Warrior.
Right, that makes sense. Smaller world than we think, huh?
Yeah.
I had just been picking out all the ex-Disney Interactive people who moved to Insomniac.
He was originally at Apple. He went from Apple working on the Pippin to the 3DO working on the 3DO, and then to Sony working on PlayStation.
Amazing.
He was also the original producer on God of War. But he didn't like David Jaffe, so he left. I have no idea if I should be telling these stories, but
that's all right. No one's watching.
He told. Well, they might watch the VOD.
Now.
Anyways, Gottlieb's fears proved accurate. Politicians saw pinball as inexorably associated with gambling. When states passed laws prohibiting payout games, they usually outlawed all forms of pinball. No, not true. It took quite a while for such things to happen. So, pinball, payout, banned pinball. You just had to be careful about what you did. So there were counties you could actually sell into. Just not the 3 biggest cities in the country, Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. The most celebrated attack on pinball. Yeah. I mean, that's not wrong, but it's also a really weird way to put it.
Amazing.
Came from Fiorello Guardia, New York City's flamboyant mayor. Yeah, he was pretty out there.
The airport.
Yes, who the airport is named after. As part of his ongoing crusade against organized crime, LaGuardia petitioned local courts for a ban against pinball. After 6 years petitioning the courts, LaGuardia's request was granted. No, he didn't actually have anything to do with the injunction that came down. So, LaGuardia... What to do with the injunction that banned pinball in NYC. He was ready, though. He like, on the day that the judgment came down, they raided all of Brooklyn to seize all the pinball machines.
As it reads down low.
Yeah. A Bronx court ruled pinball an extension of gambling and made it illegal. LaGuardia is celebrated by having the police confiscate pin games from around the city. He held a press conference in which he demolished several machines with a sledgehammer. Then they threw gasoline over everything, which is especially funny because they had just entered World War II and they were going to ration supplies and stuff. But he had a point to prove. So
you should have taken a steamroller and
yes.
Had a bunch of crying kids in the background.
yes.
The event was shown on newsreels in theaters around the country. Jacob.
There was a gaming connotation to the coin-operated amusement business. There was a photograph I remember very clearly. Fiorella LaGuardia, mayor of New York City, by the waterside, breaking up all these, quote, games of chance, and throwing them into the sea to dispose of them. Today, he'd have an even greater problem with environmentalists.
I mean, it was a stupid thing, like him just throwing it all away.
Yeah.
Joel Hochberg, president, Rare, and Coinit. I already corrected this up there, but Joel Hochberg is not the president of Rare. He was the president of Coinit.
Toys. And toys hate me. Either they go or I go, and I am most certainly not going.
Within 3 weeks of the Bronx court's ruling, the New York Police Department confiscated and destroyed more than 3,000 pinball machines. I think it was even larger than that. Mayor LaGuardia donated the metal scraps to the government in support of the U.S. war effort against the Nazi army. What was left? You burned it all.
Wasn't that a bit early for the war effort?
No, it's 1942.
Okay.
January
Yeah,
1942
nowhere
this
in the
happens.
ballpark. Yeah, okay.
So
It was a big jump.
Yeah. In all, he donated more than 7,000 pounds of metal scraps, including 3,000 pounds of steel balls. Yeah, they just collected all the balls out of the machines.
Balls of steel.
New York's ban on pinball remained in place for nearly 35 years. Yeah, that's
balls of steel.
Almost 35. Once New York City banned pinball, neighboring counties followed. The trend spread quickly. Actually, I'm not sure that really did to neighboring counties, but I don't know enough about exactly when everything was banned. I need to make like a big spreadsheet for that.
I would also be interested in maybe something to look into for me is how did this occur in Europe or in the Netherlands? I'm pretty sure there was similar.
I mean, you pulled up that one article I remember from like the 50s or something. I can read it, but it showed people like playing pinball and stuff.
Yeah, sure. This was around at that time, so interesting to see if there are similarities in.
As far in one part of it is because in a lot of Europe it wasn't introduced until the flippers came. Like the flipper games, no one ever really had the thought that they were gambling machines.
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that we had stuff like that before.
I'm saying en masse, like you guys had Bagatelle, obviously, but like,
right.
In the coin-operated sector, one thing Michael Gottlieb told me is that like the majority of Gottlieb's sales in the 60s and 70s were to Europe. So they were big on it over there.
Right.
The battle for legitimacy. Gottlieb believed that the only way to legitimize pinball was to prove that it involved more skill than luck. Years passed before he found proof. In 1947, one of Gottlieb's engineers, a man named Harry Mabs, who is from France, by the way, added an innovation to the game. 6 spring-powered levers that players used to propel the ball back into the playfield before it rolled out of play. Well, it didn't roll out of play. You were like hitting it against bump. Well, yeah, I get. Yeah, there are still holes. There's still gobble holes, so you can get extra points by getting it in the hole rather than it just being rolled out of play. So I am going to call that holes out of play. All right, we're on our 4th page of corrections. We're barely into this book. Gottlieb called them flipper bumpers, as I say very funnily on Nate's podcast, and said that they proved Humpty Dumpty, his latest pinball cabinet, was not just a game of chance because players scored most of their points by knocking the ball back into play with flippers rather than relying on luck and gravity. Well, there are other things that they also claimed, made it not a game of chance, but overall, like the places where pinball was banned, they would not relent on that until it became popular in other places. So Humpty Dumpty doesn't fundamentally change the game. It takes a little while. Again, I go into this on the Memory Machine podcast if you wanna listen to that sometime. The flipper bat was quite an interesting breakthrough because it gave the player a true means of exercising and developing skill. You can aim at targets now rather than the old days where you popped the ball and just shook the shit out of the table and hoped that he does swear and hoped it went into the right hole or hit the right thing. The use of the flipper bat is probably the greatest breakthrough ever in pinball. Dempsey, you're Roger Sharp again.
Oh, there's a quote coming up. It not only changed the basic landscape of the games themselves, but specific to the players, it really changed how they interacted with the games. It was a totally different entertainment form than it had been. More important, it was a remarkable change for the game designers and developers. What had been the prescribed way of doing game development for the previous decade had to be altered dramatically. No longer was the situation of a person passively interacting with the game. Now there was true influencing and greater control from the standpoint of the player.
I mean, there are, like, earlier pinball games you could, learn and influence stuff, and Humpty Dumpty doesn't change it overnight. There's a process to this. Because, like, there's still holes and all that. Like, you're gonna lose your ball. You're not gonna keep it in play. You can't bat the ball in between the flippers. They're oriented in the wrong way. So, yeah, there's quite a bit to do after that. Gottlieb's flipper games became the salvation of pinball. Yeah, eventually. Pushed on by a desperate need for respectability, other pinball manufacturers and distributors imitated Humpty Dumpty's flipper bats and called their cabinets flipper games. In France, where pinball has a long and popular history, pinball machines are simply referred to as les flippers.
Le flipper.
Le flipper. Dancy, do you want to play some flipper?
I want to play some flipper.
Beautiful. After years of complaining about competitors stealing his ideas, Harry William found himself imitating rather than innovating as he joined the growing number of pinball manufacturers adopting the Gottlieb flipper. Interestingly, they'd never patented the flipper. I don't know why, but they did not actually patent their design for it.
Slipped their mind.
They patented quite well, actually. So Gottlieb, yeah, they didn't start patenting until after this period. So Gottlieb was more of a motley shop, whereas Bally was like patenting everything that they did.
Mm-hmm.
Williams' first flipper game was called Sunny. By this time, Harry Williams owned his own Chicago amusement company, Williams Manufacturing Company, which he founded in 1942. Nope. Williams Manufacturing, founded in 1943. That information took a while to find. Though Harry Mabs created the first flippers, it was Steve Kordick, an engineer from a company called Genco, who discovered the best use for them. Kordick replaced Humpty Dumpty's 6 flippers, 2 at the top, 2 in the center, and 2 at the bottom, with 2 flippers along the bottom of the playfield. Kordick's innovation was introduced in a game called Triple Action, but they were still not oriented the right way. They were still facing outwards. so you couldn't flip the ball between them. And years later, Harry Williams hired Mabs as his chief designer. Mabs later recruited Kordek to work for Williams. Yeah, I don't think Babs was ever a chief designer at Williams. He just kind of left Gottlieb. Didn't do too terribly much. I worked for a small company, and I was always told to save money. There was no way in the world I was going to use 6 flippers. The main thing that Kordek did is that he changed the power of the flippers to alternating current. So they could actually flip up the table instead of just kind of be whacked. Whack. Most pinball machines created in 1947 had 6 flippers. When Kordek's 2 flipper design was demonstrated in a trade show in January 1948, it caused an immediate stir. The industry has followed his basic design ever since. No, they haven't, because they put the flippers in the correct direction, which was something that Harry Mabs did. It was a table called Just 21. So that's when the orientation happens, but then you have to have a couple more innovations until the game isn't about just getting your ball in a hole anymore. Again, I cover this on the podcast. Even as Gottlieb sought to legitimize pinball with flippers, Bally introduced bingo machines, flipperless pinball machines with rows of pockets. Bingo reopened some of the wounds caused by payout games. Though pinball remained legal, most states outlawed bingo machines permanently. I think it was actually a federal decision that actually put down pinball machines, or bingo machines. Jacob, take it away.
People tried to operate bingo machines legally and treat them as regular pinball machines, but because they were gambling devices, my grandfather didn't want to have anything to do with them.
He has this very strange view of it. He didn't... It was weird when we talked. Mike was actually calling, like... He kept referring to him as David rather than grandfather, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if there's a reason behind that. Like, he was very close with his father, who kept running Gottlieb after David Gottlieb left. Flippers were enough proof that pinball was a game of skill for some legislators. Satisfied by flippers and free game rewards for high scores, some states relaxed their laws governing pinball. New York continued its ban into the 1970s. There were 5 game manufacturers in the beginning. It was Gottlieb making pinballs. It was Williams making pinballs and novelties. It was Bally's making pinballs, novelties, and slot machines, although the major industry didn't use those. It was Chicago Coin making pinballs and novelties. It was Midway making novelty games, target rifles, and so on. There was a 6th, United Manufacturing, but just about the time I joined the industry in 1964, United was purchased by Williams, so it put back down to 5. Not purchased by Williams, purchased by Seaberg. United purchased by Seaberg. They were both purchased.
You're correcting the quote.
Well, yeah, he chose to put it in there. He was like, I need to put this information in about United Manufacturing. He could have cut the quote off right there, but he decided to keep doing it. And there's no correction on there or anything. So
I think most people, when they think of this part of the story, would only know about it through that one drunk history story.
Yeah, and I think Roger takes some pride in that. I've never asked him specifically about that, but I was trying to weave around the pinball stuff, talk about video games when I was talking with him. He's a very thoughtful, insightful man, also very diplomatic. So I had to be careful with some of the things I asked him.
Yeah.
The coin-op amusement industry has two tiers of companies. The first tiers include companies like Gottlieb and Williams, with manufacture amusement equipment. The second is made of local distributors and operators who place equipment in stores, bus stations, bars, restaurants, and bowling alleys, and set up routes to maintain it. You're forgetting Are we getting to the third? I'm not sure if we are. Though flipper machines and other games have long represented a steady source of income, the jukebox defined the industry in the early going. I'm not sure what you mean by early. During the 1940s and 1950s, definitely not early for the coin-op industry. Jukeboxes were an integral part of the fabric of American society and the main source of income for amusement companies. Known as music operators, these distributors placed jukeboxes and games in bus stations, restaurants, and ice cream shops. In exchange for permission to place their equipment in businesses, operators paid location owners a portion of jukebox and game receipts. They established routes and hired teams of technicians to maintain their equipment, empty the coin boxes, and place new records in jukeboxes. Keeping current with the latest music trends was essential to earning good income and keeping location owners satisfied. It was a competitive business. The music operator's entire livelihood depended on keeping customers happy. If a location owner thought he had received inferior equipment or old records, he could make arrangements with a new operator by simply picking up the telephone. Dancy.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
It's okay.
In the mid-1960s, Gottlieb was a recognized leader. Bally was a recognized loser.
Bally.
In fact, I knew a salesman named Irv Kempner in New York City who worked for a Runyon sales company. They were distributors of both road jukeboxes and Bally pinballs. And one of the guys said the reason Kempy was the best salesman was because he had the worst pinball and the worst jukebox to sell. Today, Rowe was number one in jukeboxes, and Bally owned the pinball machine industry in the late 1970s and early 1980s.
If you go to an old penny arcade, some of the equipment we consider antique today was quite popular in the days that I started in the industry. It makes me feel old. Joel Hochberg, the original grandpa of the coin-op industry. Historically, the oldest coin-operated amusement machines were known as novelty games. Before making Baffle Ball, David Gottlieb manufactured a novelty machine called the Husky Grip that tested the player's strength. Not his strength, his grip. Those are two different things. It's the Husky Grip didn't test strength. By the 1940s, companies had already invented mechanical baseball games. Other games simulated horse racing, hunting, and Western gunfights. I'm not sure that there were the 1940s Western gunfight. Yeah, I'm gonna call that one out. 1940s games with Western gunfights. Over the years, the field has grown to include hockey, soccer, known by many as foosball. Wait, he calls it soccer? Like, he just calls it soccer?
I commend Stephen on this use of the word soccer.
Known by many, but not by him apparently, as foosball. Flying and even building construction? What?
What was that sentence again?
Over the years, the field has grown to include hockey, soccer, flying, and even building construction.
The field. Go back.
The field has grown.
Companies already invented mechanical baseball games, simulated okay. So simulating all that. So simulating hockey, simulating soccer, and simulating building construction.
Like, I guess he's talking about the cranes. Because early crane games, you just dug dirt.
Okay.
You didn't get you didn't get stuffed animals and whatnot. So I guess, but like that's such a weird way to put it. You're not really simulating this construction.
If like the early Tetris that no one knew about was with this
electromechanical game of Tetris,
dropping little dominoes of different shapes on top and seeing how well they go.
Oh, that would be brilliant. I hope that turns up in Russia someday. One of the most popular themes was the shooting arcade. Taverns began carrying mechanical pistol games in which players shot tiny ball bearings at targets on the other side of a small glass-enclosed cabinet. Larger shooting galleries with rifles became staples at arcades. Jacob.
We had some wonderful ideas like the Seaberg bear gun, a classic that old-timers still remember. You took an actual rifle that had a cable attached to a console about 6, 8, 10 feet away, and the bear moved from left to right. He had light-sensitive targets in his stomach and on each side. As you shot, he would rear up and growl and turn in the other direction, and you just kept shooting until you ran out of bullets. It was a huge, big hit. A lot of people had it. We also had the 6-gun game where you had a great big mannequin dressed like a cowboy. He stood at one side and challenged you to a gunfight, and you stood on the other side and had a pair of guns mounted in a little stand-up frame. He would challenge you to draw like a 1, 2, 3, and you would pull out your gun, and he would lift his arm. If you got him, you would say, "You got me." And if he got you, he would say, "You lost. You're dead." That kind of thing.
Dead.
The 6-gun game was built like a Russian toilet so that it would last forever. And it did.
Russian toilet.
Soviet toilet. By and large, you didn't go into an arcade in those days to play a specific game. You went into the arcade to go into the arcade. You went in there, got change for your dollar. Of course, some games in those days were still on nickel play. And you just looked around to see what there was to play. You put a couple of nickels in here and put a couple of nickels in there until your dollar was used up.
The separation between those two games is quite a while. Like that, the cowboy game was from the 70s, and the shoot bear game was from the 40s. So, I guess Eddie found a very unique arcade that had both of these side by side.
Western gunfights.
Yeah, probably what was being referred to, but yeah, not in the 40s. By the 1960s, novelty games had become quite sophisticated. Black lights were built to do the cabinets to make objects glow against dark backgrounds. One game, Chicago Coin Speedway, had a projection screen for a background. Players steered a race car in the front of the screen, dodged the projected images of other cars. If the player came too close to a projected image, the machine made a banging sound to simulate a crash, and the player went back to the pack. These were the direct ancestors of modern video games. Sorry, yeah, a lot. There is quite a few interesting things from the late electromechanical era that influence video games.
Yeah, I have to believe in you too, fine gentlemen.
All right, you have a good night, Mr. DNC.
All right.
Bon
See you
Peace, peace. This will be up in the video, lady. All right, Birth of a Visionary. I wonder who it is. If any one person has worked at every level of the amusement industry, it's Joel Hochberg. I really don't think this is true, but he is an interesting man. I do have his phone number. I need to call him sometime. So someone reached out to him to ask about Phoenix, the enigmatic game that we need to know more about. A jovial, quiet man with a self-effacing sense of humor, Hochberg entered the industry to remain near his ailing mother. He never imagined that years later he would help reestablish a multi-billion-dollar company and change the evolutionary path of the entire industry. Multi-billion? I'm not sure what company he's talking about. Not Rare. Rare wasn't that well capitalized. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Hochberg earned an associate degree in electronics from the New York Institute of Technology. I never wanted to find out how to make things tick. I wanted to know how to make them tick better. He got his degree in 1956 and began the selective interview process at Burroughs Corporation. One Saturday, a neighbor who worked for Master Automatic Amusement asked Hochberg to help him repair a jukebox. He, my neighbor, worked for one of the larger companies in the Five Boroughs area. He asked me one Saturday morning if I could help him. There was a very prominent location that was without music and would have been without music until Monday because the distributor was closed. Having the jukebox shut up would cost the company a lot of money, but I think more than the money was the lack of entertainment required for the weekend in that location. It was nearly impossible to understand the impact that jukeboxes made on the business in the 1950s. At the time, not having a jukebox meant that customers went elsewhere. Though he had studied electronics, Hochberg knew nothing about jukeboxes. He opened the machine and found a problem with the amplifier. The jukebox worked within a few hours. Hochberg later found out that his neighbor had never really expected him to be able to fix the problem. I mean, if they're doing it for free, you might as well let them, right?
Yeah.
Harry Siskind, then president of Master Automatic Music, was impressed that Hochberg had fixed the jukebox and asked to meet him. Siskind didn't have a job to offer at the time, but told Hochberg that he should consider working in the music operator's business because he had the ability to take things with a technical approach. Take things with a technical approach. That is a strange way to word that.
That sounds like it being diplomatic.
Accepting a job at Burroughs would have meant Hochberg moving to Pennsylvania, which, because of his mother's dire illness, he was unwilling to do. My mother was deathly ill, and I really had no idea as to the prognosis was. She was basically terminal, but I didn't know it. At least I didn't believe it. I don't know why he's like he has the block quotes, but now he just for some reason has in paragraph quotes. Yeah, a weird thing with the editing here. I don't know if those editors were really doing their job. Anxious to stay near his mother, Hochberg took a job at Triborough Maintenance. We did Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, and Manhattan. We probably did all the 5 boroughs, but it was called Triborough because I think the individuals who formed the company came from 3 different boroughs. Why is this important? Why did he put this in?
Because he told him that, I guess.
For a salary of $55 a week, Hochberg works long hours, 6 days a week, and provided his own car. He began by repairing jukeboxes and pool tables. At this time, New York distributors still carried novelty games as well as jukeboxes. Pinball was still banned. For the most part, novelty games represented only a small part of the business. The popular novelty games of the times included shuffle alleys, indoor tabletop bowling lanes, which players used metal pucks to knock down the miniature bowling pins. Other popular themes included racing, baseball, and shooting galleries. In New York, where pinball was still illegal, novelty games often turned a good profit. You just needed to make sure that twice in the sentence, or twice in a paragraph, that you know that pinball's still illegal in New York.
Don't forget, this hasn't happened yet. That pinball's regained its legality.
Mr. Sharp has not made his shot yet. All right, read this quote.
The biggest part of our business was shuffle alleys and ball bowlers. Remember, I came from the city, and these were legal items. Every bar and grill, every tavern had a shuffle alley. Baseball was a very popular game. It used a bat and pitching mechanism. In some cases, lights on the playing field were used to show bases with runners, and in other cases, men rotating on a motor carriage. You had some moving targets, some escalation ramps, you had home run areas that were predetermined, and of course sometimes home run camps came up, and if you were able to hit them, your ball went out of the park.
Woo, out of the park, woo! America baseball, yeah! Wall boxes were another popular item in the industry. These were tabletop cabinets that linked booths and tables to a central jukebox. Each box had a song list, coin slot, and buttons for ordering songs. Restaurants, diners, and malt shops, placed wall boxes on tables and booths so that customers could select and order songs more conveniently. Must imagine how complicated those things were inside if they had to control something inside the jukebox. Man.
We have like a simulated one at work that I'm going to sometimes just to peek inside. Like, since it's all computers, there's not a whole lot in there. But I can imagine what we had was a big place, so it's just as long as you had a little bit of room, maybe.
Yeah, I can imagine what these look like. I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen one, but
there
that's
might be
not
some
digital.
videos somewhere.
Yeah, I'm trying to think an actual electromechanical, and I imagine it's kind of a box.
Actually, I think what's his name at Tecmone had one of those, like one of the tabletop ones.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll look at that later. And wall boxes were great for the industry because the machine would play a record once. It's convenient if a record was popular that 4 or 5 or 6 people would select that record, but it would only play it once. The same situation holds true today. Jukeboxes don't dedicate songs to an individual, they just deliver the requirement to play. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'll assume it's profound.
Sleazy language, I think. making the sleaze profound. Just be like, you know what? This is what was really missing.
Always the innovator, was he? Hochberg found a way to improve the system. He was the first engineer in his area to place volume switches behind bars and counters so that bartenders and restaurant managers could make the music louder upon request. I mean, that is pretty good. You need to have some skill to do that.
Yeah. Nowadays, you just turn a key and the amplifier goes up.
Right. But, electromechanical days, these were complex machines. Location managers welcomed the change. Before this, the only volume control was a knob hidden on the back of the jukebox so that customers couldn't get to it. Although his mother died shortly after he started working at the Triborough, Hochberg continued to work for the New York and music companies until 1961. This was during a period which working within the music industry had its hazards. J. Rudd?
I've also had a situation where a gentleman who played the game after I repaired it lost a lot of money, so he was angry. He said, "If you didn't repair this game, I wouldn't have lost." And he wanted to do a number on me. I've seen a man carrying a gun in his hat. I've had a shot fired at me. Let's change that. Not fired at me... let's change that. Not fired at me directly, but fired into the location where I was working on a United baseball game.
Yeah, these stories do happen, but it's not all controlled by the mob, no matter what they say. That could have been anything, really. Like, it didn't have to do specifically with the game, necessarily.
The good old days.
Indeed. Once when Hochberg showed up at a bar early one Sunday morning to service a machine, he was attacked and beaten. An investigation into the incident revealed that he had been mistaken for the bartender. Again, has nothing to do with coin-op necessarily. The next thing I knew, I was being brutalized by a couple of people who were very aggressive because they didn't know who to beat up. The indication was he's in the bar on Sundays before the bar opens, so there were two people in the bar. They didn't ask me what my name was or what the other gentleman's name was. They just came in there. It seems that there was some kind of local issue, something that had to do with a relative of one of the people. The bartender's wife was the sister of one of these fellows, and the bartender was mistreating the sister. Yeah, so literally nothing to do with the coin-op. So I'm very glad he included this quote.
I think it just had like 2-3 hours with this guy, and they just said whatever. And it's like, yeah, I'm putting this in. This is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that he's not an interesting guy. I definitely want to interview him sometime.
Right now, this is just a Hochberg biography.
Yeah, exactly. It's a weird way. It's a weird way to open the book because he really doesn't keep with this style the whole way through. If I had to guess, this is probably the chapter that was added when he republished it, but I don't know. Hochberg also remembers that some people liked him for what he did. Sometimes while working his route, he'd have to run outside to put money in a parking meter, only to discover that people had recognized his car and fed the meter for him. Oh, what nice people. In 1961, Hochberg took a job with New Plan Realty, which was opening the Cavalier, one of the world's first restaurant/arcades. One of the first restaurants ever.
I think he was trying to say restaurant arcade combos.
I know, but it's one of the first restaurants and the first arcade. And I'm pretty sure that's just complete crap, but I can't specifically disprove it. I think they're trying to say it's kind of Chuck E. Cheesy, but not really.
Yeah.
Built in a new shopping center. Okay, this is interesting because I do out.
This was after Disneyland, so this wasn't exactly breaking new ground.
Right. Although in a shopping center, the shopping mall arcades don't come around until the late '60s with Aladdin's Castle. So I honestly don't know what the what this. I haven't looked into this, so this is definitely something I'm going to note and see if the year's right on this. Built in the new shopping center in Philadelphia, the Cavalier was an enormous endeavor with a 10,000-foot square dining area and a 2,500-square-foot arcade. Hochberg was hired to help build and manage the arcade. The same year that Hochberg moved to Philadelphia, a group of socially awkward college kids began an experiment that would eventually change Hochberg's life. And that will be Space War, and that will be next time on on whenever this stream is, because I've been going 2 hours and I'm hungry. So
Yeah.
I,
everyone left halfway through.
yeah, I mean, I don't really mind so long as somebody gets something from this. So
Yeah, I hope this gets a lot of attention for what you have.
yeah, you know, I'll be putting up the VOD and everything. But thanks everybody for stopping by. We'll be picking up on Chapter 2 of the Ultimate History of Video Games next time. See you then.